IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday. Hope everybody is geared up and ready for a fun and relaxing weekend. I know I am. There's been a lot of travel on my end. Brian, I know you've been running around like a chicken with your head cut off, busy with all these recruiting visits and spring practices and press conferences and all those different things. I'm sure we're both ready for a weekend to relax. But before we get there, man, there are still some things happening and going down this weekend. There's a big recruiting visit that Notre Dame is hosting this upcoming weekend. And so in part one of today's show, that's what we're going to preview. We're going to talk about some top-level guys that are going to be on campus. We're going to give a preview into them, kind of where they stand, what their recruiting process is looking like so far. And then, of course, folks, as you guys know, it's Friday. We have our Friday free-for-all mailbag. So be sure to get those questions in. But before we get to that, Brian, like I said, Notre Dame has a big recruiting weekend, and they're looking to follow up what they did on the 21st, which is, as of right now, already a successful recruiting trip, considering Lathan Wissenton committed earlier this week, who was on campus. Yeah. They severely increased their odds of getting him. Now he's committed.
Trev, you know a weekend goes well when one of the guys you did not expect to commit this quickly commits this quickly. Yeah. And you know, we reported on Sunday night that we thought Lathan Wissenton, well, not we thought, but he flat out told Brian Alt, who then told me, and I put it into the intel piece, that Notre Dame's his new top school, which I took as, okay, great, they're going to be a major player for this kid. And I had said in an intel piece that I thought Notre Dame was now the new leader for him, Trey Segar and Isaiah Rogers. But then to see him commit that quickly, you're like, okay, yeah, you know you crushed it. When a guy that I am in my top 5 might be the next commit gets pledges. So hopefully, like you said, Trev, they can have similar success this weekend. But yeah, that's when you know it's the mark of a good weekend, when you're coming out and you're landing guys that you weren't even thinking going into the weekend. Like when I told somebody, I talked to a source and I told him, hey man, this is what we were told, and he was like, man, it's great to hear. We'll see. Like, he was not sure, kind of where that was, and then boom, a day later, it's like, all right, sweet. So yeah,
right,
real good stuff. Real good stuff.
Definitely a good spot to be in, but. Now it's about stacking. We talk about stacking classes. Now Notre Dame is going to have to stack weekends and make sure they have another successful weekend. They're going to have, 20 visitors on campus between the 27 and 28 class this weekend, Brian, if I counted that correctly?
It's close to that, yeah. Some 27, 28 kids. This weekend's interesting too, Trev, because you've got a lot of kids committed elsewhere in this group that's on campus today. And I thought that was pretty interesting. You've got a 2027 Miami safety commit is going to be on campus this weekend. You've got a Michigan offensive line commit from 27 that's going to be on campus this weekend. So it is interesting. They've got and then Keldred Bay is an Oklahoma commit who will be on campus this weekend, a running back in the 27 class. So yeah, we didn't have a lot of that last weekend. This weekend it's going to, you got a few of those guys. I don't know how hard they're trying to push those guys to flip right now, but they're just guys that they're recruiting, and we'll see how things go coming out of the weekend. But yeah, it's going to be a big weekend. And look, Trev, man, it's a list that, before we dive into it, this list looks very different now than it did a week ago. There's some guys coming on campus that we weren't expecting to come on campus. Sean talked to Daren Prescott, who we'll talk about in a little bit, and he was like, hey, I'm going to probably come to Notre Dame later in April, and I'm going to try. And then boom, just like that, he cancels an A&M and a Nebraska visit so he can come to Notre Dame. You've got Gavin Williams wasn't necessarily expected to come this weekend. He's on campus this weekend. So the list got more impressive over the last few days, and it just kind of shows the momentum that Notre Dame has right now on the recruiting trail. I would say Notre Dame right now is probably one of the, in my opinion, I would argue that they're one of the 4 or 5 hottest teams in recruiting over the last 12 months. Just looking at kind of how teams have been closing and, how teams are starting off in this class. You look at Notre Dame, you look at, Texas A&M's been on fire recruiting. I think, Oklahoma's doing really well right now, but they've got a bigger class, and I think they weren't quite as strong. USC's been hot. Miami's been hot. Oregon's been hot. I think those teams are all, over the last 12 to 16 months, I would argue, are the teams that are just consistently just rolling in recruiting. And Notre Dame is going to look to continue that this weekend.
Well, let's start talking about some of these visitors that are going to be on campus. And we're going to start in the 27 class of safety from California. Gavin Williams is going to be on campus. He's a top target in the 2027 class, that's for sure.
This is a big one, Trev. People have asked me, I didn't even know I muted myself that time. People have asked me, who are your favorite players in this class? And I couldn't really say, because until the last month and a half, Trev, I don't dive into recruiting the way I used to. I don't spend year round diving into thousands of film like I used to, for reasons I've expressed in the show before. So it's really only the last couple months that I've really, started to take a deeper dive into the board in 27 and 28 and really kind of got into the weeds of some of these kids. And Gavin Williams is a kid that, as soon as I started, that was just one of those, oh, I love this kid's film. I love the way he plays. I love the way he carries himself. And, for a while there, USC was considered the leader. And I thought Mike Mickens did a really nice job for a while, like just building that relationship, getting Notre Dame into a good position to where, I felt like they were either the leader or in the conversation of being the leader, possibly could be become the leader. And then Aaron Henry comes in, and he and the staff have just really continued that and taken it to another level, in my opinion, which was important. And of all the coaches, like, I think all the three new coaches, I think have done a great job of just hitting the ground running on the recruiting trail. I think Charlie Partridge has done a great job. I think Brian Jean-Marie's done a great job of his challenge was even harder, because he had to redo the board completely, because I don't think the board was in a great position when he got hired, because he was the third linebacker coach in the last 3 months, when you really think about it, because Max Bulla left, and they have moved down Washington, and now here. And so I look at it and say, his task was different, but they all had a very difficult challenge of, can you jump into this mix right away and build on these relationships and get yourself in a great position? And Aaron Henry's done a masterful job of that. And Gavin Williams is a perfect example of that, Trev, where he's really put Notre Dame in a great position. And, look, I'm not predicting that anyone is going to commit this weekend. I don't really love doing that, because nobody's coming in with the thought. Like, we knew last year when Ebenezer Utade visited campus, we knew he was going to commit that weekend, right? So we had an idea. We knew that Rodney Dunham had already committed to the staff when he visited that same, his last time. I think it was Rodney Dunham. But, like, this time, there is nobody that's coming with the intention of, I'm committing this weekend, that I'm aware of at the present moment. But I do think there's a few kids that, if you can crush this visit, maybe they do make an earlier decision. But at the very least, your goal with Gavin Williams, Trev, is to say, hey, we need another safety, and he is a top player on our board, and he's a guy that we really like as a staff. We want to go get this kid. And to me, that's something that I'm going to pull his film up here real quick and talk about him a little bit, Trev. But, like, this is the kind of kid that I want to see Notre Dame close on. So maybe it's as much as wishful thinking as it is anything. But I do think that this weekend is an opportunity for Notre Dame to jump into this one in a way where it's like, boy, they're going to be hard to beat. Right now, USC is still recruiting him heavily. Washington is still recruiting him heavily. But I think Notre Dame has really put themselves in a great spot with Gavin Williams, Trev. And look, Notre Dame hasn't done super well in California in recent years, and I don't think that California is ever going to be as important, or at least not anytime soon. I don't know that California is going to be as important to Notre Dame as it used to be. He's got a little receiver film on here too, but I still think it's an important state. And you don't have the volume you used to, but you look at the Kingston Viliama Asas and the Madden Faramos, and you realize, like, that's still a very important state. And you've got to get the kids that fit what you're trying to do. And Gavin Williams is absolutely that kind of player. He's smooth, he's athletic, he's got some juice, he's got length, he'll hit. He's got to obviously get stronger like Joey O'Brien did, but he's a willing hitter. But he's more of a Tay Johnson type of safety, in that he's going to make a ton of plays on the football, more so than be a guy that's going to come down and just make 19 tackles and just lay people out against, Army or Navy. He's more of that guy that's going to have a lot of pass breakups, a lot of interceptions, like that job right there, like reading that outcut, undercutting that outcut, being patient, jumping that route, making that play. He does stuff like that regularly, Trev, regularly. So not only is he long, is he athletic, does he have speed, but he's also a really smart football player. And that's why Gavin Williams is one of my favorite players in this class. And this is a huge weekend for them, because they're already doing really well in the secondary class. Khalil Terry's doing it. I think they've done a great job of making him comfortable with where the staff is. Ace Dawson appears to be locked in. You've got, Xavier Hassan, who, I think is a big time player, is obviously locked in. So I think he's a guy that now it's about adding to that group, and Gavin Williams would be a great guy to add to that group.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a very smooth athlete. He has great instincts for the game. I'm excited to see what he does his senior year because his film was really, really impressive. Good hands. I love the Tay Johnson comp. Can play both sides of the ball. Very athletic, strong. Yeah, he'd be a great addition to the class, especially in California.
Yeah, and then there's people in Notre Dame fans that just they just really want to get more California kids, and he'd be a pretty good one to get, and so would really enjoy that pickup very much. But the point I was saying earlier is he's one of those guys that I look at, I'm like, I don't know where I'd rank him right now nationally, and I don't really care what his ranking is. I haven't graded him out yet. I would assume he's going to be a top 100 player on my board, just the gut feeling I have when I do grade him. But he's one of those guys that's like beyond the grade. It's like, boy, you just need a guy like that. Like that guy just has a chance to do something really good. And that's what I see. That's what I see Gavin Williams being. And somebody in the chat just brought this up. Bill Walsh just brought this up. And you keep USC from getting him, which is another win for that one.
Yeah, heck yeah, it would be. But Gavin Williams is not the only important player that's going to be on campus this weekend for Notre Dame. There's going to be a lot of high-caliber targets in the 27 class, including a quarterback, Camden Leati from Utah. I believe we watched his film when we were going through the names know, and he was an exciting player. Definitely more, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, he was more of the street ball guy between the three that we watched.
Yeah, he's the run-throw guy. He's the dual threat guy. He's got almost 5,000 yards, actually almost 6,000 yards passing for his career. Trev, he's got over 1,000 rushing yards in his career. He's a dynamic player. Like the thing I said about him when we watched him the last time is he doesn't have like the arm power of Champ Mons and David Davison, but he's the guy that's the playmaker of the three. And you see it on film. I mean, he scrambles around. He makes plays off script. He can change, platforms with his arm, and he's also a guy that can sit in the pocket and dice you up if you need to. And I like that about him. The comp that I used for him when we talked about him last time, I said he's a better throwing version of Bear Bachmeier. You know what I mean? Like he can he's not like an elite athlete. He's not Brandon Wimbush. He's not Malik Zaire as a runner. He's not as sudden as Everett Golson. I mean, remember Everett Golson had the jump cutting ability of Jadarian Price. It was ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, and he's not that. He's more in the, I want to say almost kind of like a Riley Leonard-esque type of athleticism where he doesn't look as athletic as he is. But the thing that he does, he's a more natural drop back and throw it guy than Bear was coming out of high school. And I think that's why I liked Bear Bachmeier a lot coming out, but that's why I preferred other guys because I just never thought Bear had that like elite level throwing potential. And I think Camden has a lot more of that as a pocket passer. Obviously, we know he can do things off script, but at the end of the day, to thrive in Mike Denbrock's offense, you got to be able to sit in the pocket and dice people up. Jaden Daniels made a lot of highlight reel plays, but where did Jaden Daniels do most of his great work, Trev? Dropping back, going through reads, and getting the ball out accurately. And that's what ultimately Mike Denbrock wants at quarterback. And I think that's why Camden is a guy that I think the staff really liked above others. And when I say above others, I'm putting him and Davin and Champ all in that category because they all can do things with their legs. But I think that's the thing that really stood out about Camden is just that dual threat ability, but he can sit back and throw the football and effectively throw the football. And I think that's important. So
yeah, absolutely. There are some things that I get concerned about with a dual threat quarterback coming out of high school, and it's two trains of thought. One of them, you play at a high school where you're just the most physically gifted player on the team. You need the ball in your hands every play. That's not the case for Camden Leati. He is one of the most gifted players on his football team, but mechanically he's still there as a quarterback, and you can see it with some of the things he does when he's maneuvering the pocket. He's keeping his eyes downfield. His footwork is good. He has a clean, compact release, whereas you see other dual threat types of quarterbacks at the high school level, they're just the most athletically gifted player on the offense. So he's a talented kid.
Yeah, and this weekend is important for his recruitment, Trev, because I think Notre Dame, I know Notre Dame has been doing a great job of trending with him. You know, there was a period of time where I think they were trying to figure what direction do we want to go with these quarterbacks, and who is a guy that we think can fit what we want, but also a guy that we think fit he fits who we are as a school. And I think those three kids all fit that mold. That's why they offered all three of them. And I think what we've seen here in recent weeks is that Camden is the one who I think they've built the connection with the quickest. And that's why I think you've seen them make some pretty big moves in his recruitment compared to some other players. And that's why I think they're trending in a good direction with him. This weekend's going to be a very big key for that. Very big key.
Now, since they built the relationship with him the quickest, are they still going to try to get the other two quarterbacks on campus?
Yeah,
or okay.
They're still working on that. Yeah, and the thing is, they actually have had a longer relationship with Camden. He visited like a week or two before Teddy Gerard committed.
Oh, wow.
And so like I wrote I didn't write a story. I edited and published a story that Sean Davis had put together in his interview with Camden, because he's developed a good early relationship with Camden. And the photo that I used was a photo from when he visited last spring, and he visited right before Teddy committed. So Notre Dame was more aware of him than they were like Champ Mons and Davin Davidson, because Davin was kind of just broke onto the scene this year. And then Champ reclassified. A year ago, Champ was expected to be a 2028 prospect. And so I think that's also why they've connected the best of the three too, is because there was the longer established relationship between them. And I also think that speaks volumes is the fact that he wasn't a guy that Notre Dame kind of desperately had to go find because Teddy reclassified. This is a kid that was already on their board, and I think it's why it made a very smooth transition into bringing him into the mix as one of the quarterbacks they're going to go after. So, but this weekend's going to be big, Trev. You want to be able to either close the deal. Obviously, you'd love to get him. You'd love to get your quarterback early in the class so he can be a leader of the class. And I think Camden just reeks of leader when you talk to him. You can ask Sean Davis about this. Like, he'll tell you the same thing. Like, this just kid has sort of that aura about him where like kids are going to follow him, right? And he's got a pretty good ranking, at least according to some. The rankings this year have just been all over the place with a lot of these players. We're just a very, very wide projection. But 247 him as a 3-star. He's ranked number 115 overall by On3, which is fine. I mean, I'd probably have him a little bit higher, but that's in the range. Like I'd have him probably like 80 to 110-ish, I think is fair for where he is right now. And then ESPN has him as a top 50 player. So you get a guy like that, west. I don't know what to even call Utah. I mean, it's kind of out west. It's not West Coast because it's not on the coast, but it's out west. He's a kid that I think would have some traits that would allow him to bring leadership to this class, along with Teddy. And so I think, what would it say about Camden Leati if he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Notre Dame right after they signed Teddy Gerard and Noah Grubbs"?
Yeah,
I think that tells you he's got a little bit of dog in him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, you do know they just signed two four-star quarterbacks right in front of you, right? So, wait till you get a load of me, kind of thing. I love that about him. But yeah, this weekend's big for that, Trev, is you really want to be able to try as best you can to seal the deal. But if you can't seal the deal, at least put yourself in far enough a position where you're going to be hard to beat moving forward.
Brian, next guy on our list that we're going to talk about is somebody that you are extremely, extremely high on. You made a post about him on X, I think earlier this morning. He is a very talented wide receiver, talking about Cade Cooper, wide receiver from Pennsylvania. He's also going to be on campus this weekend. Notre Dame looks to make some pretty big moves with him as well.
Yeah, he's another one of my, okay, I love this kid. You got to get this kid. I don't care what his ranking says. Cade Cooper's a really talented player, Trev, and a guy that is very underrated, in my opinion. He's ranked number 227 overall by Rivals on 3, and everybody else has him as a 3-star. That is a bad evaluation, in my opinion. The first thing you'll notice as you watch this film, guys, his ball skills are elite. His body control, his concentration, his ability to track the ball, his hands are incredibly strong. he does a pretty good job, Trev. I talk a lot about urgency. What is urgency as a receiver? One of the things I like about Cade is even though they don't throw the ball a ton, he does do a lot of things where he shows me some of that off the ball experience. Look at that catch right there. Like he brings a lot to the table, Trev. There's a lot to like about his game. He's tall. He's got the ball skills of a boundary. He's got the vertical speed and the body of a boundary, but he also has the ability to do some things with his quickness, with his route running, with his speed to play to the X position as well, that field outside position. So I'm a big fan of Cade Cooper. He graded out as a top 100 player on my board. So I have a very different opinion of him. And honestly, the minute Notre Dame started really evaluating him, he became a top priority. Because, look, here's the deal. Notre Dame's pushing hard for Cade Cooper. They're in a great place with Julius Jones Jr. They're in a great place with Quentin Burrell. They're in a very good place with several other receivers, yet they still pushed for him. Why? Because they view him as in that category with that top group. This is a A-level prospect for Notre Dame. This is a guy they really want. And if you ask me what my dream class is for Notre Dame in this class, a receiver, and when I say dream class, it's more of okay, here's the guys on the board. I don't have Easton Royal. I'm talking about guys that they're legitimately recruiting and have a chance at. My dream scenario is you get Cade Cooper in no particular order. Cade Cooper, Julius Jones Jr., and Quentin Burrell. That's my group. And if you can add that to what you got last year, because the reason now there's Julius can play slot, but Julius can also play outside. Cade can play both outside spots. Quentin Burrell can play both outside spots. And it's a little bit more outside heavy than last year's class, but that's exactly why I like that trio, because last year you had a lot of smaller, shiftier, athletic slot types, and you didn't have as many natural, just I'm an outside guy. Caden Finley can play outside, but right now he's playing slot. Devin Fitzgerald's the only true outside player on their board in the 27 class. Other guys can do it, but it's not necessarily their biggest ideal position. This would give you some size and some playmaking ability to the outside, which would be a great compliment to last year. And singularly, that's what I like about Cade Cooper. He gives them a body type they don't have a lot of on the current roster in the younger classes. And he's a really good football player. He's one of my favorites.
He is. Yeah, man, I love watching his film. You can see all of his tools. His high school doesn't ask him to do a whole lot because the little they ask him to do, defenses can't stop. There's a lot of tools that he...
Yeah, they're a running team. This is where Peter Jones went to high school, by the way, if you guys remember his film. They run the ball a lot.
There's a lot of tools that he has, though, that I think it's going to translate well into him being a really good route runner. I mean, he has insane contested catchability already. It's just... You guys see it on the film. They don't ask him to do a whole lot besides goes, fades, deep over, slants, and hitches. But they can't stop it because he's the best player on the field when he's out there.
And the thing I like about him too, Trev, is you'll even see, even though he doesn't run a lot of routes, but he shows a good feel. You'll see him attacking leverage. You'll see him stemming guys up and then trying to get them kind of in a balanced position where you can beat him inside or out. I think your point is very well put, that when he starts being taught the entire tree, he's got the foundation that's going to allow him to really quickly become a top-notch route runner. That's a great observation. I agree with you completely.
He's a talented kid, man. Definitely a talented kid. He's one of many that's going to be on campus this weekend. Another one that we're getting ready to talk about is a pass catcher. Tight end Malik Howard from Tennessee, another 2027 kid. He'll also be on campus this weekend.
Yeah, really like Malik Howard, Trev. There's three tight ends right now that Notre Dame is pushing for hard. Jackson Dollar and Cooper Terwilliger were on campus this weekend, and then Malik Howard's on campus this weekend. I think Notre Dame would love to have two of those three guys. And they did a great job with, Jackson. They're his leader. Were his leader coming in. I think they're still his leader coming out. I'm pretty confident in that. They did a great job kind of getting in the mix with Cooper Terwilliger, and then now you're bringing Malik Howard on. And I think Notre Dame's done very well here so far. Harris Biven has done a lot of good work on this recruitment. He's a very interesting player. He's a little bit more of a all-around player than Jackson Dollar is right now. You'll see him attached at the line of scrimmage, and he's got to get stronger and all that. But he's got some physicality to his game, Trev. He's a really good pass catcher, but I like that he Jackson Dollar is a high school receiver that's going to have to learn to do some things in the tight end. He's more of a Shannon Sharp type tight end. This kid to me is more of I don't even say Mitchell Evans because I think he's more physical than Mitchell was. This kid is more of a modern day tight end that I like, in that he's not just a pass catcher. He's a pass catcher that can also line up and block a 9 technique. He can line up in a wing and be physical at the point of attack. And as he fills out and adds more weight, he's like 220 right now. He's going to be a really effective blocker. But the reason you're recruiting this kid, Trev, is because of what he does as a pass catcher. That those traits are outstanding. And so they got on him a little later than some of the others. They've done a great job. Harris Spiven leading the charge. Mike Denbrock obviously involved in that one, of really trying to grow in his recruitment and climb up his list. And they've really connected well with Malik Howard. And this visit is look at that release. That's better than something we saw from some Notre Dame receivers in the past years before Mike Brown showed up. You know what I mean? That's pretty sad, but also great for Malik Howard. But this weekend's going to be very interesting with Malik Howard. This is either going to be a weekend where it's like, okay, yeah, you're not beating Notre Dame for him. Or it's a weekend where it's like, okay, he saw it and, he likes it, but he still wants to go through the entire process. And that's what I'm curious to see how all that plays out. But yeah, part of his game, he reminds you of Preston Frizzell, right, Trev? And then other part of your game, you're like, dude, I'm seeing some blocking in there. I'm seeing a guy that can kind of get after in the run game a little bit too. And that's what I really, really like about Malik Howard. Really talented kid.
A new age tight end is a good way to describe him. He's kind of like that. But if you could put Ian Premer and Preston Frizzell into one guy, it kind of looks like this. I'm not saying that he's going to be as good as each of those players at their peak, but he has a lot of those similar tools.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're not saying he's – because if you combine those two players together, it's like, well, that's an elite player. You know what I mean? But, it's not what we're saying. It's like he's got some traits that they both bring to the table. Because we would admit Ian Premer is a better blocker than Preston Frizzell is right now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm with you. But they want playmakers that can do everything. It's almost kind of like a better pass catching version than Ty Washington.
Yeah.
With what Ty was last year. And hopefully he's even better at this year.
Absolutely. I like how much in his film too he attacks the seams, attacks the middle of the field. That's something that Notre Dame needs out of their tight end position that they haven't had in a little while either.
Yeah, he's a really good player. I like him a lot.
Let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. 2027 defensive end Epheni
Madobe, I think is how you say it. Yeah, I think.
Yep, he is a defensive end from Indiana. Actually, what high school does he go to?
He's from I think he's from Northside, I believe. Northrop.
Yeah, that's Fort Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
first year playing football last year, Trev, which is really interesting. He had never played football before last year. So, yeah. Very new. We're going to bring up his film here in a little bit. You can keep introducing him. He's a new offer as well. He got offered within the last month or so.
Good deal. Yeah, I am not as familiar with this film, which is why I appreciate that you're bringing it up. But it's another Fort Wayne kid that's going to be interested in Notre Dame. I had a buddy that coached volleyball at Northrop High School, so I'll see if he's heard anything about him. But
I bet you this kid be a freaky volleyball player. He's like 6'4", with really long arms. The thing about him is, and I've tried to tell people this, right now I don't see the huge upside that some people say that he has, because he's just so raw. So I can't take a kid who's played football for 1 year and be like, okay, he's going to be a 5-star. I just got to see more from him. But what you do see on film, Trev, is you see a kid who's tall, exceptionally long, and a pretty explosive athlete. That right there. He doesn't get blocked, right? But that's a good burst. That's good closing speed. And you can just tell on film he doesn't really know what he's doing, but he's got a lot of tools. And if he can learn how to play football, because there's a lot more to being a great football player than just tall, twitchy. Look at that get off. Tall, twitchy, explosive, things like that. You've got to actually know how to play football. And he's learning how to play football. Right now, he just gets by on I'm better than everybody else. That play right, this play right here, you go against any offensive tackle Notre Dame is recruiting right now, he's done. He's got no chance. But against Fort Wayne, against some kid I probably wouldn't recruit to a Division III school, he's going to dominate, right? It's so those are the things that will hold him back. But everything that holds him back right now is coachable. The things you can't coach is what excites you about his game. Tall, long, explosive, athletic. And what I like too, Trev, is a lot of kids that just kind of start playing football, it takes them a while to embrace the physicality of the sport. You watch games from this kid's first, because you can actually go look at clips and stuff from his first few games. This kid's playing physical game one. So he clearly has embraced the physicality. So there's a lot to work with here. He's the kind of kid that if Notre Dame decided tomorrow, hey, we're going to push for this kid and we want him in the class, we want him to be part of our 3-man class, I'm like, cool, do it. Let's do it. Because as we've said, if you get Abraham, Cisse, and a couple of these high floor, high ceiling guys, then you take a shot on a kid like this. And he's a lot like Adetokunbo Ogundeji was. Remember who Notre Dame flipped Adetokunbo Ogundeji from? Do you remember who it was, Trev? You remember who it was? Western Michigan. Like, that's who they flipped it from, was Western Michigan, a MAC school, and he develops into an NFL player. But he was way behind Khalid and Julian and Dalen when he first showed up. But he had great tools, and he was a worker, and he had a great attitude. And from the people I've talked to, it sounds like this young man has all those things as well. He just has to learn to play the game, you know. And this is the kind of guy that someone like Charlie Partridge drools over, because he's like, this kid is a raw ball of clay, you know, never been molded. Like, this kid is just going to come in and just with no pretenses of what D-line play should be, and I get to coach him up. And, you know, you can see the traits, Trev. But every play looks the same. It's a million miles an hour off the film to the ball. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm like, there's a long way to go here from a development standpoint. But, dude, the tools are outstanding.
Well, they are. I mean, he has the length, the size, the athleticism to be a really good defensive end. Now it's just, to your point, becoming a better football player. So I like it. It's definitely not a guy that you want to build a defensive line class around, but a great addition to a strong foundation to a D-line class. I agree completely.
Yeah, and he's the guy that could eventually become that big-time player. I mean, he's got the physical tools of someone who could play in the National Football League. It's just from where he is now to being a National Football League player is a million miles away. But you know what you always do, Trev? You always bet on tools. As long as those tools come in a package that includes hard work ethic, good attitude, good character, all those things, you bet on those tools. And this is a kid that you absolutely say, hey, I'm gonna bet on this kid. He's got big time ability.
Let's head back out west and talk about a defensive tackle that's going to be on campus from the 2027 class from California. Montana ToyLo is going to be there tomorrow. Do you morning, afternoon? When does that?
I'm not sure. I would imagine it'll be. I assume that he'll probably come in today at some point in time and then be there for practice tomorrow.
Well, good deal.
Because that's why a lot of these guys are coming in town is to be part of the practice, to see the practice.
Sure. Well, Montana ToyLo is going to be on campus. He's a defensive tackle from California. Another talented kid, one that Notre Dame is looking to make some strides with.
Yeah, you know, he's an interesting player, Trev, because he plays at Mater Dei, and Notre Dame has had zero success at Mater Dei, just none. He's a little bit of an undersized kid. He's listed by some at 6'2", 255. I'm told he's bigger than that. I'm told he's over 6'3" now and up to over 260, but he's not going to be a huge kid. Honestly, somebody asked me like who I would compare him to. I have a buddy who all he ever does with me is ask me, who does he compare to? Who does he compare to? And I'm like, dude, you know I hate this question. Who does he compare to? And when I thought about Montana, I said he reminds me of like if you put Junior Tuilamaka and Elijah Hughes into one player. That's kind of him. He's a good athlete, great motor, strong, active player. You know, just makes a ton of plays, great chase, pursuit, great hands, but he's just small. He's not going to, doesn't have David Fuller run shoe and Braden Parks' kind of frame and physique and all that, but kid just knows how to play football. And in a perfect world, you know, he's your third or fourth D tackle in a rotation, you know what I mean? And he's going to come in and make a ton of plays for you in a short period of time, like Elijah Hughes does. The guys like this aren't going to win you any recruiting rankings battles. He's a 3-star kid. You know, I think he's, you know, kind of a top 250 caliber guy, but you love having guys like this on your team because they're that glue guy. And that's what I think Montana brings to the table. And he's that kind of guy that just always seems to outplay his ranking. And that's kind of what he is, what he brings to the table.
Good deal. That's definitely a good spot to be in. Definitely a good spot to be in. Were you wanting to bring up any film of him or?
No, because there's no highlights of him. It's all game film. Everything you watch is game film. So, yeah, no.
Gotcha.
We'll bring up film of just these 328 kids, and then we'll just rapid fire through those here real quick. But there's 328 kids on. There's a lot of 28 kids on campus this weekend, but there's 3 that are guys to absolutely keep an eye on.
One of them is somebody that we've talked about quite a bit on this show already. It's defensive end Daren Prescott from Illinois, 2028 kid, and he's a member of that just elite level 2028, 2027 Chicago, Illinois defensive line classes that are coming through. This kid's special.
Sean and I were talking last week, Trev. He's a very interesting situation with Daren Prescott because he's been to Notre Dame several times. He knows what Notre Dame's about. He was at a game this fall, and he was telling Sean that he was planning on visiting Notre Dame at the end of April. He wanted to get out and see a bunch of schools he'd never seen before. This weekend, he was going to go to Texas A&M and he was going to go to Nebraska. 2 different schools, 2 visits. Then lo and behold, we get told yesterday that he's coming this weekend. And we were able to confirm with him he's coming this weekend. And, you know, his thing was like, I just really wanted to get to see Notre Dame again. And I think that says something. You know, you just saw, look, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it just comes right after Notre Dame just had 2 other elite 2028 defensive ends on campus this past weekend in Cam McGee and Jackson Vaughn. And I've said before, that's the potential 3-man group that would mirror the 3-man group that they got in 2011. It would be as good as that group, if not maybe a tad better. The Aaron Lynch, Stephon Tuitt, Ishaq Williams trio. And that's the kind of ability they have. Daren is a very interesting player. I love his film. He's tall, he's long. You know, he's athletic, he's powerful. But he's not as advanced as like Cam McGee is from a technical standpoint or a body standpoint. But he's got every bit the talent and every bit the potential and upside at Bolingbrook. And he's a very, very intriguing. He's more like what you'd expect from a sophomore. Very talented, but still learning the game. But when you look at the film, Trev, he's got everything you want. 6'4 plus, long arms, twitchy, explosive, powerful, and he's instinctive. There's a play on it, and we're not going to be able to watch all of his film. It's like a 14-minute long highlight. But there's a clip on his film where he's coming up hard off the edge, and the quarterback tries to throw a screen quickly over his head, and he almost picks it off. He just got up so quickly to it. So there's so much potential here. You talk about where he's a sophomore in high school. And so he's got 2 more years of development still to go. And he's going to get so much better, which is kind of scary. And I would not want to be an offensive lineman in the Chicago area in the next 2 years. And I have to block against, you know, Cam McGee and Daren Prescott and some other guys the next 2 years. Hard pass on that one. But thing I love about Daren Prescott is he wants to learn. He wants to get better. But the tools are elite. He's got the tools of a first-round draft pick. And I don't say that very often for a sophomore. But when you watch him, when you watch Cam McGee, you can't help yourself but say these are elite players. And the best part about it for Notre Dame, it's from right down the street. They're in Notre Dame's backyard, which is what makes him a must-get player. Him and Cam McGee are must-get players for 2 reasons. 1, they're elite. 3 reasons, really. 1, they're elite talents. 2, they're great Notre Dame fits. Like, just as young men, they're great Notre Dame fits. And then 3, when those type of players on the D, look at that get off right there, Trev. That first step right there is outstanding. Like he's even not, he doesn't even get off the ball super fast, but like as far as like reading the snap, but when he goes and just kills that tackle, just crushes him. That kid's faking a knee injury. Look at that. But the third part is when there's elite players in Chicago, especially defensive linemen and receivers, you've got to get them. Got to get them. And that's what makes Daren Prescott a guy you absolutely have to get in the 28 class. Must get. Big time must get.
Yeah, we've talked about it ad nauseum. With Chicago being in Notre Dame's backyard, less than 2 hours away, they have to own that recruiting ground. It's a place that they absolutely have to have dominance in, especially along the defensive line over the next couple of seasons. But he's not the only defensive end that's going to be on campus that we're going to highlight in the 2028 class. We're also going to talk about George Parkinson IV, a 2028 end from Pennsylvania, another talented kid that'll be on campus tomorrow.
So this is a bit of a new one, Trev. I'm going to pull up his film in a second, but he is actually a teammate of Cade Cooper. And so he plays at Malvern Prep. Obviously, we all know a little bit about Malvern Prep because Peter Jones is from Malvern Prep. So obviously he's a a guy that has some familiarity with Notre Dame, but he's a very intriguing player. He's a very highly ranked defensive end. I don't know that I've ever seen a sophomore class this loaded with defensive linemen. And obviously he's not a Chicago guy, but he's a Notre Dame's kind of backyard kind of guy. You know, I mean, Pennsylvania's an area where Notre Dame needs to have more success, but this is a kid, 6'4", 230, athletic, great motor, got length, you know, just, I mean, you watch him play, Trevor, and you're like, that's not a sophomore. And he's a guy that right now, Penn State, from what I'm told from different people, I think Penn State's probably the team in the best shot right now, but it's very early. And that's why Notre Dame is working hard to get him on campus, because they want to put themselves in the mix with him. And they're just absolutely loading up with offers of big-time defensive linemen. This is one of the deepest D-line classes I've ever seen for sophomores. And George Parkinson is part of that. He's a very talented player. And so there's not as much to discuss with where his recruitment is right now. This is more of this visit will determine a lot of what happens moving forward, more so than with some other guys. They're already in a great spot. Now it's about closing the deal. With him, this is about, hey, put yourself in position where you're going to be a player for him moving forward.
He's a strong kid. He has a good feel for the game. He already has a pretty solid foundation in his pass rushing arsenal. I like this kid. I haven't seen his film before. So
yeah.
he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And then there's one more kid that I really want to highlight, Trevor. It's another 2028 kid named Grant Bowen. He is an athlete. I mean, he's a big-time player. He's like, and I mean that literally athlete from the style of play, but then also what he can play. This is a kid that some people project as a tight end. Some people project as a defensive end. I think in certain defenses, he could play 3-4 outside linebacker, maybe linebacker. I mean, he's a very intriguing player that Notre Dame is starting to, I think, get a little bit more in the mix for as they start to ramp up their 2028 recruiting. Young man by the name of Grant Bowen. I keep wanting to say Matt Bowen, but that's his dad who played at Iowa. This is a very talented player, Trev. He's from the same high school as Dom Hulack, Immaculate Conception in Elmhurst, just outside of Chicago. Very tall, very rangy, very athletic. And again, just another one of those kids where you're like, gosh, kid like that in your backyard, you got to get that kid. Where's he going to play? Don't know, don't care. You know, like just get him. And then you got 2 years of high school football left to figure out where this kid's going to play. Whether it's tight end, whether it's defensive end, whether it's linebacker, I don't care. He's just one of those kids where you just get him into the program, and then you can figure that out later. But look at that. Look at that route. That's a sophomore in high school, Trev. Look at that. Watch him stem this guy out and then just snap him back inside and just beat this guy for a big play. Look at that. Lean him outside. Boom. That guy's got no chance. Catches the ball well. Very talented player and can do a lot of different things. Nice route there. Go up and get it. Good ball skills. So just another one of those really talented 2028 players. And there's a lot of them. Chicago, Trev, we keep talking about it. 27 and 28 in Chicago is insanely loaded. Insanely loaded to where it's like, if you're Notre Dame, dude, clean up there, guys. Clean up there. You gotta do it. You gotta do it, man. So, and he's one of those kids that I put in that category for Notre Dame. And I'm a little later on to his film. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to y'all that like, oh, I've been high on Grant Bowen for months. I only watched this film within the last month for the first time because, again, I'm just kind of getting into the 28 kids. And he's one of those kids where you watch 3-4 clips and you're like, oh, okay. And you just can't stop watching because of all the different things he does. But he's a very gifted player. Just another guy you want to get on campus. You know, there's a lot of other kids on campus this weekend, Trev. You've got a pair of 27 running backs with offers. Terrence Grant Jr. from Nevada. I got his whole thing wrong. He's from DeMatha Catholic. And so I just assumed he's from Maryland. I never knew there was another DeMatha Catholic, and this one's in Nevada. And then there's Keldred Ben, who is a relatively recent offer at running back. He's a short, stocky, powerful runner from Texas that's committed to Oklahoma. You've got 3 offensive linemen in the 27 class. Nate Brenneman from Iowa, Louis Esposito, who I believe's dad coached at Michigan. He's from Saline, same high school, CJ Carr. Ken Bauer from Maryland. You've got he's listed as a linebacker. He's kind of a hybrid player. Noah Renez is coming in campus this weekend. And then, of course, there's Jalen Jones, who's a very, very talented safety from Florida, who's currently committed to Miami. He's also going to be on campus this weekend. Then there's four more 28 kids coming on campus this weekend. Brady Quinn, the quarterback from Florida, Maddox Weiss from Indiana, very talented player, Sean Smith, and then Javante Eldridge. So those are all really good players that are going to be on campus this weekend. So it's going to be another jam-packed weekend for Notre Dame from a recruiting standpoint.
All the more reason to be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com so you can start seeing some of the immediate follow-up from a lot of these recruiting visits. But, Brian, I'm with you. Like you said, it's going to be a very, very big weekend for Notre Dame on the recruiting trail. Big one. Brian, it is Friday. And here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, Friday means one thing and one thing only, and also recruiting today. But one thing and one thing only, and that's the Friday free-for-all mailbag. Now, if this does happen to be your first mailbag, if you want to get your question answered, put a little MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji before your question. That lets us know to set your question aside. But as always, you can throw in a super chat, and you can get that question bumped up to the top, and I believe we have a couple in there.
We do. First of all, it's from Black Irish. Chris says, here's my late fee. So Chris said, hey, sorry I'm late, and people gave him a hard time. So we appreciate that, Chris, very, very much. And your Gold Club order has been sent out, by the way. So Chris is getting a new mug and a new IB Gold Club T-shirt for joining the Gold Club. So we appreciate you, man. And we also have a super chat from John Emerson.
Appreciate you, John. Buy, sell, hold both, please. Well, since you asked so nicely, John, I think we will. So buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will lead the nation in both points per game on offense and points per game allowed on defense in the regular season.
I'll buy that they lead the nation in scoring on offense. I'm not saying they will. I think that's possible. I don't buy that they're going to lead the nation in scoring on defense. And that's not a reflection in any way on I have more faith in Mike Denbrock than Chris Ash. I just think that the way that Marcus Freeman runs his program, they're not going to try to bury a team in the fourth quarter the way that other people do. Number one. Number two, this isn't a great schedule, but I do think we've talked about this draft. There's some good offenses on the schedule this year. And I think Notre Dame could give up 13, 14 points and have a great year defensively per game and not lead the nation in scoring. So that's why I don't have them there. But I think I'll be shocked. I'll be disappointed if they're not top 5 in both.
Agreed. I would argue that if Notre Dame wants a chance to win the national championship, you probably should be top 5 in both. That's been a pretty common trend for the majority of the most recent national championship winners, I would say. But yeah, I'm buying offense because they were one spot away from that this past year. They were second.
Yeah. Although I do put a little bit of an asterisk on that because they were 3 going in, I think 3rd or 4th going into the playoffs. Indiana was ahead of them going into the playoffs and then dropped 0.4 behind them after the playoffs. And Notre Dame didn't play a postseason game. And,
Fair.
Indiana still went out and scored, 38 points against Alabama, 56 against Oregon, and 27 against Miami. But then they had 13 against Ohio State. So that kind of dragged them down. So, okay, they didn't score like Notre Dame did, but even in the playoffs, they averaged 40.3, which is pretty good. And Notre Dame didn't play a postseason game, but still, okay, they're top 3 or 4 no matter what. And that's with them having one of the worst red zone offenses in the country last year. So
yeah. Offensive, that's a definite buy for me. Defensively, I'm going to sell it. I think that's something that's extremely, extremely hard to do. Not impossible. But I also think some of the teams that would help kind of lower their average allowed on defense are going to be better this year. I think Purdue is going to be slightly better. Now, I don't think that they're going to allow 23 first half points, 30 overall. North Carolina has the opportunity to put some points up on them. I've been high on Wisconsin, so I'll sell it, but I think they end in the top 5.
Yeah, I'd even be curious to know the last time a team even led the nation in both scoring and offense on both sides of the ball. It's been a long time. Certainly not within the last 7 or 8 years.
No way.
All right, we got a lot more questions here we'll get to. Let's get up here to the top. And we've got a question from Jay Melvin.
Brian, looking back at the 2022 coaching carousel, when Coach Freeman got hired, who inherited a worse situation, Brian Kelly at LSU or Mario Cristobal at Miami?
I would argue it's very similar. I think that Brian Kelly inherited more top-level talent, but a very thin roster, whereas Mario Cristobal inherited a little bit of a deeper roster, but not nearly as good at the top. That's what I would argue. So neither were walked into great situations.
Yeah.
But in today's era, I don't care. Curt Cignetti won a national championship in 2 years.
Made the playoffs in his first year.
Right, exactly. Because of the playoffs, because of the portal system. So, yeah. Yeah. No excuses. No excuses to not be able to turn around quickly.
From one of the best names of one of our daily listeners, Vince Trowbridge, the VP of IB. What are some of the pros and cons to starting Jack Larson at tight end and Gilbert in the boundary as opposed to Porter and one of the Flanagans?
Well, I mean, if they're the two best players, there's no cons. I mean, if they win those jobs, there's no cons. You're putting the best player on the field. The only thing that I would say is in Jack Larson, you're getting a different type of tight end than you are with one of the Flanagans. I don't even want to say it's a con. I just want to say it's different. Jack has worked very hard. I sat down and talked with him at one of the interviews lately. He's worked very hard to improve his blocking. He knows, you play tight end, you just can't be a pass catcher. You got to be a blocker. So he's worked hard on getting stronger, and you can see he's filling out and getting bigger and all those things. And he's like, he understands. If I want to play, I got to be able to block also. So, I think those are things that I look at Trev and say, I think that he would bring he would be more of like a Mitchell Levens type of tight end, pass catcher first, solid blocker, where the Flanagans would be more blockers first, pass catchers second, is how I view that one. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would label anything as an unknown. Or as a con, I would label it as an unknown. I mean, the thing that I would say for Micah Gilbert, you could honestly probably say the same thing for Quincy Porter because he's currently out right now, is will Micah Gilbert be able to stay healthy for the duration of an entire season? Because the next time he does that will be the first time that he does that. And then with Jack Larson, it's just what is his proven track record in a game as a blocker, like what Brian said. Because I've seen James Flanagan and Cooper Flanagan and Ty Washington all block in games in meaningful snaps. And I have yet to see that from Jack Larson. Not that he can't. It's just one of those things that is an unknown.
My premise would be, Trev, if they win the starting job, then they've answered that question to the coaching staff. We would just then need to see it, and that's why I say it's like, it's not better, it's not worse. It'd just be different. Now, what would be pros and cons of starting them for any other reason? Like, you're not putting your best player on the field. That's about it. But if those guys win the job, great.
From Aiden Benami, do you think there should be, or are the returning captains automatic captains for this upcoming season?
No. You've got to earn your captaincy from year to year. If you're a captain one year, but you don't do the same things that led to you being a captain in year two, let's say, hey, I think I'm hot stuff now, and I don't have to work as hard, and I should have more things given to me, and I shouldn't have to be expected to do this and do that because I'm a captain. Guess what? You're going to lose your captaincy. The odds of that happening are not great because of the type of young men that Notre Dame had as captains last year that are returning. Like you watch practice, Trev, even in like the stalk block videos, it's like a Don Schuler. It's like, bro, why do you always choose violence on the football field? You know what I mean? It's like, anytime you see a scuffle, you're like, I don't know where 8 is, but I know he's probably somewhere in the middle of that scuffle right there. He's just got that fire to him, but he's also an exceptionally focused young man. I don't see him slipping. You listen to Drake Bowen talk, you're like, yep, he's not missing a beat. You know what I mean? It was funny listening to Brian Jean-Marie talk about, like, yeah, Drake's the leader of that room. I mean, it's like he's been here 2 days, and he's already like, yeah, Drake's the guy in that room. So I expect them to be, but they will have earned that second captaincy. It won't be handed to them.
Yeah,
it will be that they've continued to live up to the expectations and values of a captain.
Yeah, I'm same line as you are. I think they should be if they earn it. But it's not just a title that you just come in to have every single year. I get you.
Yep.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, it seems that recruiting is ramping up rapidly with guys like Lathan. What may be different than last year in the operation that could convince them to commit earlier than they planned?
I don't think it's different than last year. I think it's simply about your circumstances changed. And, Lathan Ransom visits Notre Dame. He said before the visit how excited he was to learn about Notre Dame. We had a preview of the, preview story up of that visit. And this is a young man that knew what he was looking for. And when he got to Notre Dame, he found exactly what he was looking for. And he's a thoughtful young man. His parents are very thoughtful. From what I was told, he and the parents asked a lot of very important questions. And you could tell that he was kind of thinking about okay, can I see myself here? And when he came out of the visit, it was like, I can see myself nowhere else. And that's why I made the decision. And so, there's a question from Aiden Benami that kind of leads to this as well. But, his says, you mentioned in the Lathan Wisington show, which I thought of as well, is he committed so soon after the visit? Normally coach says, think on it, et cetera, not too soon of a turnaround. And that kind of is like his question, but they did that. That's why he didn't commit on the visit. And they didn't even have to tell him that. They went home and talked as a family and made this decision. So what you do is you don't necessarily want to take it, because as I said to you before, when I talked to my sources around the program, they did not see this coming the day of the visit. I told a source, this is what this kid told us. And they're like, well, that's great. We think we did a great job, but we're not sure if we're there yet. And then, 2-3 days later, he's in the class. Why? Because it was a thoughtful visit from a family that knew exactly what they were looking for, knew what they wanted to ask. They went home, sat down, and quickly realized this is the perfect place for him. And that's why he made the decision. So that's why it doesn't bother me as much as maybe some others might have bothered me. And then just real quick, we'll bring up Iden's second part of the question. He goes, Trev, they for sure want to go for Trey S as well. What a running back room the last 2 years, if so. I think you're the one that's saying that they will definitely go after Trey Segura as well. I had said from the beginning, there were 3 running backs that they loved: Lathan Wisington, Isaiah Rodgers, and Trey Segura in no particular order. And that they would take the 2 that they wanted to, that if they could get 2 of those 3, they will take 2 of those 3. My understanding is they're turning none of them down to wait on another. It's the first 2 that want to come. I've also said, Trevin, shows that I love Trey Segura. I think he might have the highest floor of the 3 backs. But what I said is I will take all 3 of them. And at a lady DM me the other day, and she's like, okay, just off the record, which one do you like best? And I was like, I'm giving you guys my honest opinion. I love all 3 of these backs. The only thing I've ever said is I would like to see Isaiah Rodgers be that number 2 back in the class, because I think he brings a different element to the game. Isaiah's another 10-5 kid. Think about that. 2 10-5 backs. But Isaiah's got a skill set, Trev, and we broke down his film, that if he reaches his full potential, he reminds me a lot of Daren Price in that he can do with 5 touches what a lot of people need 10 touches to do. You know what I mean? That's kind of how Isaiah Rodgers is to me. And that's exactly how Daren Price was. Is Daren only needed 4 or 5 carries a game to impact the game. That's it. And he's a talented player. He's a talented player. So that would be my preference for a combo. But if Trey Segura called up tomorrow and said, hey, I want to commit, am I saying, well, hold on, let me check with Isaiah first? No. If Isaiah wanted to come and commit, I would not hold up and say, hold on, let me talk with Trey first. You have 3 elite players. First ones that want to come, you take them. And if you see some of the things that are trending on Twitter today, you guys will understand how prophetic that what I shouldn't say prophetic. That's how keyed in that we were with that intel when we put it up, that Notre Dame came out of that weekend the leader for all three. And it was going to come down to who wants to come first. And that's what it boils down to.
It's a good spot to be in.
Yeah, it doesn't suck. Three really talented backs that I grade out as the top 100 players all want to come to your pro or lead for all of them. Oh, I guess. If you say so, I guess I'll deal with it. Here's a question. We now have a resident Miami fan, Trev. We've got a resident Ohio State fan who we have a question from later. We've got resident LSU fan, our guy insured by Big, who's also a premium board member, by the way. And then we've got Daily Comments, who is a Miami fan as well. The first rational Miami fan that's ever come to our site. Although there was a Miami fan in the chat earlier in the thread, Trev, who was fine. He was behaving himself, which we appreciate.
From our guy, Daily Comments, two-part question. On November 7th, Notre Dame wins, and that means the game played out how? We'll answer this one at a time.
Yeah. If Notre Dame wins the game, and here's how I see the game playing out, if both teams play to their potential, I think it's the one high-scoring game that Notre Dame plays this year. I don't see this being a game where if both offenses are on their game and their lines hold up, is a 17-14 game, 21-14 game. I think this is more of like a 31-27 game, 34-31 game, because both of these teams have playmakers at receiver. They both have talented backfields. They both have talented quarterbacks. They both have, really good secondaries. I think the biggest difference in this game from a matchup standpoint and how I think this game would play out is ultimately Notre Dame's offensive line and especially their defensive line carry the day at the end. Notre Dame gets the big sacks that Miami got last year. Notre Dame gets the big short yardage stops that Miami got last year. Like Notre Dame's, Malachi Fields made some big plays in the game. Eli Raridan made some big plays. Jadarian Price ripped off a couple big runs in the game. CJ Carr threw some absolute dimes. What was the difference? When plays needed to be made, the offense couldn't make them because Miami's D-line took the game over. That's how I see the game playing out next year if Notre Dame wins. They're the ones that dominate the trenches. And yes, insured by Big, our resident LSU fan, you are special because you've gone all above and beyond and you've actually joined the message board as well, not just here on the channel. So we appreciate you. But you agree, Trev, if Notre Dame wins that game next year, it's not that they necessarily out-athlete Miami, although they could. It's they win in the trenches. And if the game is decided the other way around, it's because Miami won in the trenches and Notre Dame turned the ball over too much.
Yeah, Daily Comments, how I see this playing out. I have Notre Dame winning by 35. That'll do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Thank you for the question, Daily. I appreciate you. Be sure to hit that like. No, I'm with you, man. It's going to be trench warfare, but not in the way that it sounds. It's going to be trench warfare and who holds up in pass protection the best, who makes the biggest plays on third down in money situations, who holds teams to field goals, not touchdowns. How I see it playing out, it just kind of feels like it's very Notre Dame-esque, especially for a game that's happening at Notre Dame at home. I could see Miami jumping out to an early lead, and there's going to be some Notre Dame fans that are like, here we go again, just like last year. And then I think Notre Dame starts to turn it on because they'll have some other big games before. So I'm not necessarily calling this the litmus test for them. I think that's going to happen back in October when they travel out to Provo, Utah. Mm. But this is going to be by far, let me retract that. This is going to be the best opponent that they play in the regular season as of right now, in my opinion. And I think that's going to hold through as the regular season starts to unfold. So I think there is going to be a little bit of that. And then I think Notre Dame's going to settle in, dig their heels in a little bit, get their feet under them, and then I think they're going to win in a close scoring game. Whether that's a 3-point game or a touchdown game, I can't tell you. I don't care who wins. Well, I do care who wins. I don't know who wins. I don't think it'll be a double-digit game either way. I think it'll be very close, but one that the final score will be close, but it's kind of like it's not as close as what the final score indicates, if that makes sense, talking about the trench warfare type of game. So Notre Dame wins. That's how I see it playing out. Brian, is your answer for Miami just they win because Notre Dame doesn't win in the trenches, or how do you see it?
And Notre Dame turns the ball over at home. like last year.
Yep.
Notre Dame had the bad turnovers, and Miami didn't have bad turnovers. That's why they won a 3-point game.
100%.
Yep. That's how I see it. All right, let's go down to, we got one from, I'm going to get some people that we haven't heard from yet. Here we go. Got one from Juan Delgado.
What are your thoughts on Oregon getting a quarterback through the portal and having sit a year instead of developing a kid straight from high school?
I'm a high school guy, right? Like, you guys know that, but I also understand why Oregon is doing what they're doing. You're paid to win football games at Oregon, and it worked out this year. Did it not? I mean, they had a first-round draft pick at quarterback. They went out and got a kid that sat for a year, learned for a year, and that kid stepped in and became that guy in 2025, led him to the playoffs, actually led him to a playoff win, something Bo Nix did not do. It's not a criticism of Bo Nix. If this year's Oregon team would have played the 2024 Ohio State team in this year's playoffs, they wouldn't have won a game in round one either, instead of having to play, JMU, right, in the first round. So, look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? That's kind of where Oregon's looking at it from. They've clearly, as a program, decided that they would prefer to get portal guys and proven guys if they can. And if you look at the 3 portal guys they got, they were all proven to some degree. Dante was actually the least proven. And that's just apparently what they want to do. And so I think what my thoughts on it, I think they're like a lot of programs. There's a lot of programs that have no interest in developing a high school quarterback. Fortunately, there are some that do. Even though he transferred before Julian Sayen's a transfer, but he's not. You know what I mean? He's only ever been coached by Ohio State. Texas obviously has gone the high school route. Notre Dame's gone the high school route. Georgia's gone the high school route. I mean, Alabama's going to have a kid that they have developed. Now, technically, if Austin Mack wins the job, he's a transfer, but he transferred with the staff. He was a kid they still recruited out of high school as a staff. So I think you're still seeing schools willing to go that route. But in this era of win now or go home, I mean, guys, Hubert Davis just got fired at North Carolina, and doesn't he won a he's been there 5 years, Trev? Won a national championship, has been in the tournament every year, and he's a North Carolina alum, played in North Carolina. He had him. Well, they win the championship. They lost. Did they lose to Gonzaga? Is that the year? Kansas. Sorry. Played in the national championship, NIT 1 year, Sweet 16, NCAA tournament. They went 24-9 this year, and he gets fired. Why? Because the standard isn't to be really good and be a great guy and develop players and do the challenge at the end of the day is you got to win, and you got to win at a level that we deem good enough for our program. And so for a lot of the teams, that's why they choose to go this route. For other teams like Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State, teams like that, they view, well, we can develop a quarterback and do that same thing. And guess what? You can do both. I would have told you 3-4 years ago, you need to develop the high school route. You can do the whole, 1 year rental guy, but you need to go the high school route. Well, the reality is, Trev, in the last 5 years, so 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, the 2 best teams Notre Dame had, record-wise, were both led by 1 year transfer players.
Yeah, I mean, agreed completely. One, if you want my personal thoughts on it, I'm relatively impartial. The last 2 years, the 4 teams that have played in the national title games, Notre Dame and Ohio State in 24 and Indiana and Miami in 2025, were all led by transfer portal quarterbacks. So I don't know, in this new day and age of college football, I don't know if there's a right answer or a wrong answer. I'm with Brian. My personal preference is you develop somebody from high school. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why I'm so excited that Notre Dame has a returning starting quarterback this year is for the continuity that it brings to the offense. And I think continuity is something that's hard to maintain when you're bringing in a new face under center every year. But here's the reality of where college football is at right now. You go look at what FanDuel's odds are for teams that are in the favorite to win the national title, and you look at the top 10, 50% of them have transfer portal quarterbacks. That's just where college football is at now. So, one, if you want my honest answer, I'm relatively impartial because I think some of it is what have you done to supplement your roster? If your roster need is that you need to go out and get a quarterback, then you need to go out and get a quarterback. But don't go out and get a transfer portal quarterback just for the sake of getting a transfer portal quarterback because that's what the two national championship winners have done. It's more so if your roster dictates it.
Yeah, and in the last 2 years, Trev, if you look, or this past year, if you look at the four teams in the semifinals, it was Indiana, Miami, Ole Miss, and Oregon, right? All four of those teams were there with transfer quarterbacks. So, look, you can win both ways. You have to figure out what works best for your program. And for Notre Dame, that's been a mixture of both. And for other teams, Ohio State, it's been a mixture of both. So you can do it in today's era. You can do it different ways. I want to bring this one up from Tyler Evans with a super chat. Tyler, thank you so much. He said, last Friday, I almost lost my little brother. Thank God he's doing well. And I personally want to thank Irish Breakdown for getting me through this rough week, man. I am so sorry to hear that, Tyler. I hadn't heard anything about that. So we're glad that he got through it. And we absolutely praise God for that. There's no question about it. So if you need anything, man, reach out to me. Let me know what's going on. But we're so happy that he made it through and that you're here with us today, man. I really, really appreciate that. Really appreciate you sharing that with us, man. Really,
Absolutely.
really do. I was going to bring up a question, Trev, from Archer, but Archer just sold us out, Trev. He just Fredoed us. He said Miami by 50. And he said he's just trying to unite with the Miami fans. So he Fredoed us. You broke my heart, Trevor. You never go against the family, and you went against the family. So yeah, we're yeah. He said just showing some love, new guy. All I hear is blah 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 blah. I sold you guys out. That's all I hear, Archer. I'm sorry, man. That's all I hear. So it's on. I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna remember that.
Go Sell blue, out. Archer. How about that?
Okay, Trev, you might have taken a little too far. You went a little too far on that one. Insured by Big in ever suck up mode says, I'm betting Indy to win every game, which means Indy will lose. Sorry. So it's like
great. Thanks, Big. Oh man.
That's good stuff. Let's get to a question from Finch Trowbridge.
Taking Ashton Craig out of the equation, if Cam Herron beats out Joe Otting and Absher somehow lost the right guard job, does Jones or Tarek, would the run game take a step back or be better in your opinion?
I mean, I think anytime a guy beats somebody out, that makes you better. Just the sheer nature of what you're asking your question. So basically, if Absher lost the job, it means that Peter Jones or Christopher Tarek beat him out. If Cam Herron beats out Joe Otting and he's the starting center, I think it makes the run game better. They're better players. Now, there's a world in which, okay, they started, but they're better pass blockers first. And, let's say Sully was a great run blocker, but couldn't block me in pass pro. Then in that scenario, yeah, they might take a little step back in the run game. But I think when you look at Sullivan Absher, Peter Jones, and Christopher Tarek, I think they're all kind of cut from the same cloth. They're physical kids. They're big-bodied kids. They're kids that really get after it in the run game. They compete really hard. Same thing with Joe Otting and Cam Herron. I think all five of those kids are pass blockers first or run blockers first and pass blockers second. And so I think if of those five, I don't worry about the run game taking a step back because somebody beat out somebody else. Same thing if like Matty Augustine beat somebody out and then moved inside to guard, or they moved Gerby back. I mean, you know what I mean? Like they're all really good run blockers. And I'd have no concerns about it. The only way I would have a concern about it is just theoretically, like I said, he's not a great run blocker, but let's say that Peter Jones is slightly worse as a run blocker than Sully Absher, but he's a much better pass blocker. And so that's why they started him. Then sure, you'd see a little bit of a dip, but they're I don't see that being the practical aspects of it. I think the only way you're going to beat out Joe Otting or Sullivan Absher with the guys we know who they are is because those guys prove to be even more dominant in the run game than even Sully is. And that's why they would win those jobs. And so I think the run game would actually be better, to your question, because he does say that. Would it be take a step back or be better? I think anytime a better somebody wins a job, comes from behind, beats out a returning starter, that means, okay, either that guy got worse or these other guys got a lot better. And from what I've been told about how Sylvan Absher's gone about his business this offseason, it would have to be about you outplaying him, not him taking a step back.
Yeah, we see that very much the same. I don't think the run game would take a step back. At the bare minimum, it's the same as it was last year. I look, there's a lot of questions floating around about Joe Rudolph, but one thing that I am confident in saying is that whoever they put on the field will be, at the worst, at the minimum, a solid run blocker. And that's what they're going to need this upcoming season. It falls in line with the identity of what the program is. They have to be able to stop the run and run the ball. So that's where I'm at with this one, Vince. I think it would at the bare minimum be the same.
By the way, you have a new fan in Trevor Trowbridge there, Vince Trowbridge, because he was telling me before the show how great all your questions were. I said, I think you might be a little biased there, Trev.
Not at all.
You might be a little bit biased.
Not at all. Great questions, great name, especially the last part.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yep. All right. So we have another question from Iden Benami, Trev. He says, any idea what Chris Ash saw in Jalen Stroman over Tate Johnson before game 1 last year?
If I had to go with anything, just experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about somebody that was getting, early, if his 2024 season panned out correctly, early day 2 NFL draft projections, started in the ACC at Virginia Tech. He saw experience. Tay Johnson was more athletic than what Jalen Stroman was. But you could argue there's players on the right. I mean, Cam Williams was more athletic than Will Pauling. And Will Pauling is not a bad athlete. Believe me, we were just at his pro day. We watched him. But I think what Chris Ash saw was somebody that's played meaningful minutes in a football game before. Tay Johnson was somebody that, he was kind of a corner in 2024. Mm-hmm. He was also starting to work out a little bit at safety. So I think experience was the separator there.
Agree. And I don't have a problem with it per se. I don't have a problem with them starting Jalen Stroman in the first 2 games. I have a problem with Tate Johnson only playing like 7 snaps against 100%. Miami. That's the issue.
Do you think their opponent in week 1 played a factor in that? Like if they would have started against Wisconsin last year, do you think Tate Johnson plays more or even starts?
Yes, 100%.
I do too.
Yeah, I absolutely. And again, I don't like that mindset. That's a mindset too many coaches have, and I think that's a mistake. Like to me, if the kids earned a chance to play him.
Mm-hmm.
What hurt him against A&M was not just that Jalen Stroman played, because actually Tate Johnson played a lot more against A&M than he did Miami, and the defense was even better against Miami than it was against A&M. The problem was the combination of Jalen Stroman and Carson Hobbs both playing a ton of snaps. And with Jalen Stroman, what I don't think Chris Ash put enough on was that Jalen Stroman was not your typical veteran player in that he had missed a whole previous year. He had to shake off some rust of his own, and you put him in a bad spot by putting too much on him early, where a healthy rotation between the 3 of them, even 4 of them with Luke Talich, would have put you in a better position. But like you look at the touchdown, the 1 touchdown against Miami, it was Carson Hobbs and Luke Talich on the field together. It's like 2 young guys being put in roles they've never played before. But yet Jalen Stroman Tay Johnson can only get 9 snaps in that game. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But it is what it is, and we don't need to rehash it. And the good news is they learned from that mistake quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah.
And we saw from Tay. But I don't have a problem with them starting Jalen Stroman in game 1. I don't. That's never been, I can't believe Tay didn't start the opener. It's always been like, I can't believe Tay only played 9 snaps in the opener. That's the issue.
Agreed.
And honestly, here's a crazy thought, Trev. I think if they would have had a proper rotation in game 1 and a proper rotation in game 2 and taken a little bit off of Jalen's plate, I think you might have seen Jalen Stroman start longer. Because it's like, hey, this is working.
Yeah.
You know, and Jalen's getting more comfortable. Like Jalen struggled in the first 2 games and then just kind of got wiped out of the depth chart a little bit. And I don't know that I agreed with that decision either. You know, so and then obviously ramped his reps ramped back up. But he had a rough first 3 games, and then he after Purdue he played 20 snaps, 16 snaps, 13 snaps, didn't play against USC. I think he was hurt. 5 snaps against BC, 12 snaps against Navy, only 24 against Pitt. Some of those were late in the game, and then he played a bunch against Syracuse and Stanford because Tay was hurt. But like he looked so much more comfortable in the defense the last 2 games than he did the first 2 games. So I think they also put Tate and Jalen in a bad spot. And I think Jalen, if he would have been used properly, would have been a better player for Notre Dame last year.
Agreed.
All right.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, I know the concept of positional value is more prevalent in the NFL, but what factors most affect positional value, and which positions tend to have more value in college football than the NFL?
Well, I think one of those things is the how important you are to a team running functionally. That's why quarterback is the number one valuable position in college football or in the NFL or any level of football, but especially NFL, right? It's everything runs through the quarterback. Mike Brown. So first of all, when you listen to Mike Brown talk, it is so, and I say I'm a little biased here, I guess, but it is so clear that he was a quarterback for most of his life that moved to receiver in college. He just talks the way he answers questions. He'll say things where it's like, dude, that was such a PC answer, but it was a good PC answer. Like it was an encouraging PC answer where he's not giving you too much, but he's also encouraging his players and still giving you something. So you think he's giving you a lot. Like he's really good at a press conference. But he said something today, Trev, that I thought was great. And he was talking about the mindset of a receiver. And he said, look, I played quarterback in high school. And so if we ran 65 snaps in a game, I touched the ball 65 times. He goes, when I moved to receiver on a good day, I'd touch it 5. And it's like, you want to talk about positional value? That's it right there. And how well I do my job as a quarterback is going to have an impact on how well you can do your job as a receiver. So if I don't do my job and I'm not good, it doesn't matter how good you are. Because if I can't get you the ball, then I can be neutralized. Texas was able to make sure that Jeremiah Smith only touched the ball 1 time in that semifinal game. You know what they could not do? Stop the quarterback from touching the ball. They couldn't keep Quinn Ewers from having the ball. You know, and that's a very unique aspect of that play. So like that's the valuable part. Everything runs through the quarterback. What makes offensive tackle, left tackle so valuable? Your job was to protect the most valuable part of our football team. You know what I mean? And then the other part of it is, and then why do defensive ends make so much? Because your job is to go attack the best player on the other team. You know what I mean? Like those things factor into it. I think the other part of it to me, Trev, is when I think you also, the further away you get from the ball, the less guys tend to make. You know what I mean? Like safeties are considered not as valuable as defensive linemen or corners. Linebackers aren't as valuable in today's game as corners and defensive linemen. Defensive tackles are considered more valuable now than they used to be. Interior linemen are making more now than they used to be, thanks in part to Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson, by the way, because they've both set the market a couple times. But I think that's a big part of it. I think the other thing, too, is the volume of big-time players at a position. There are certain positions where there aren't as many elite edge rushers as there are elite pass catchers in today's era. Like 7-on-7, like it's like there's so many talented receivers now. I got a way better shot at getting a Pro Bowl third round receiver, the perception, than I do of having a third round draft pick, a defensive end, become an elite player. And I think that factors into a lot of it as well. It's like supply and demand. Well, that shouldn't cost as much because if I lose that guy, yeah, he's an elite player, but I'm going to save $20 million by getting this other good receiver over here, but I'm going to use that money to go out and get the number one defensive end on the market. And I think that's a big part of it as well. That doesn't always kind of play out that way. But I think that's the overall feeling on it is that. And that's why I think running backs aren't as valuable, on top of the fact that teams just don't run the ball as much as they used to. I think you also have to look at it that way too, Trev, where it's just I think that guys are, there's a lot of good running backs out there, So I'm just looking at something here real quick, Trev. I'm looking at the first and second team All-Pro teams this year in the NFL. Just to kind of back up my point, here's where those guys were picked in the NFL draft. First, not first round, first overall, third overall, 12th overall, 16th overall, 88th overall, and second overall. So 6 first or second team All-Pros. One guy was taken outside the top 20 in the NFL draft. That was Danielle Hunter. You look at wide receivers, and it's a little bit of a different story. You look at wide receivers, and you look at the first, second, and third team wide receivers. There's some first-round draft picks in there. Jamar Chase is a big-time player. Jackson Smith and Jigba was drafted relatively high. There's guys in there, but you also have Puka Nacua, who was a 5th-round draft pick. Jackson Smith and Jigba was 20th overall. Jamar Chase was 5th overall. George Pickens was a 2nd-round draft pick. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th-round draft pick. And Chris Olave was a number 11 overall pick, So it's like you're just going to get that a little bit more. And so when I'm thinking about, okay, I got to pick number 5 overall, and I'm going to take the best defensive end in the class or the best receiver in the class, and I view them as 2 similarly graded players, I'm going to take the best defensive end in the draft because I have a better chance at getting a Pro Bowl receiver in rounds 2, 3, and 4 than I do of getting an All-Pro than I do of getting an All-Pro defensive end in rounds 2, 3, and 4. And I think that's a lot of that where that value comes from. I think it all goes to it. Thoughts on that, Trev?
Yeah, in my eyes, I think there's 2 things that kind of filter out into positional value. One, I think, is just the evolution of the game, and 2, it's your scheme that you're going into. I mean, depending on the team that you ask, tight end is an exceptionally valuable position. Go ask the Kansas City Chiefs or the San Francisco 49ers how much they value the tight end position. Now go ask the Atlanta Falcons the same question, who has Kyle Pitts, one of the freakiest athletic tight ends in all of the NFL, and how much he gets utilized. So some of it just comes down to scheme, depending on who you're at, and then some of it depends on what teams already have. I mean, I think the Ravens very much value their safeties. Bengals, not so much. They're trying to turn that narrative around, though. So some of it just depends, and then the other part is just the evolution of the game. You brought up a good point about how the running back position is utilized very differently than what it was back in the early 2000s, where you just have one guy that has the lion's share of carries. Now it's much more of a rotation. They have to be much more of a receiving threat. I mean, Alvin Kamara, as crazy as this is to say, he's never had an 1,000-yard rushing season in the NFL, ever.
That's so wild.
Isn't it? But for the prime of his career, he was always considered a top 3 to 5 running back in the NFL. Why? It's because of how he was utilized. But in that, you saw the safety position not have to be like the Cam Chancellors, the Troy Palomalus, the Ed Reeds that had to come down into the box and stop guys like Tiki Barber and Adrian Peterson and players like that, LaDainian Tomlinson. List goes on and on. So some of it is just the evolution of the game, and it's changed differently. And then a position that I think has more value in college football than the NFL, I'd probably say the nickel. Not a whole lot. I mean, in the NFL, it's still a lot of dominance on the outside corner positions. But in college, I think the nickel is valued a lot higher because in the NFL, there's just different things that you do schematically. Some NFL teams will just rather put 3 safeties in. Others will just go to a 4-3, but their outside linebackers like a JOK, who's like 6'1", 220 pounds. And then other teams do run like a nickel. I mean, the Bengals ran with a nickel when they used Mike Hilton. So sometimes it just depends on the team, but a lot of it goes into scheme and how much to change the game has evolved. So what my answer would be, Ball Peen.
So, Trev, a couple things real quick. Number one, we did have a super chat. I want to bring up 2 super chats here real quick before we transition to the next segment of the mailbag. We got a super chat from Andy Milton fan. He goes, Notre Dame released a funny video of the staff running the 40. IB released the same video, who's winning and who's last. First of all, that was hilarious. And I love how none of those guys took themselves too seriously. We were having fun. We were having some fun kind of joking with Sean Shivers about that at the pro day the other day, Trev. You know what I mean? He's like, he starts, and then it's get the competitive, like, you know what, if I actually train for him, it's really awesome. But man, I got to say though, too, seeing him, some of these new young coaches, I love their personalities.
Yeah.
And the energy they show. Javon Codlin, it's like, he makes me tired watching him at practice. You know what I mean? Like, dude is always moving. And I'm like, bro, you're wearing me out. You know what I mean? But I say that as a good thing. But here's the answer. Gideon's first. Trevor's probably second. And then I just hope that me, Vince, Sean Davis, and Sean Stires can finish a 40-yard dash. Why? Because they're 20 years younger than all of us. If Gideon can't win that race, then he might be the most unathletic human being on the planet. Unfortunately, I've not taken good care of my body over the years, and I'm not one of those guys who looks like he was still in shape. I'm working on it. I'm down over 15 pounds and haven't had pop in 2026, but I'm still, Gavin, I tell people I'm 47 going on 75 with my, with where my body is, part of it because just the pounding it took. But yeah, Gideon, I would hope, smokes all of us in a race. Because Trev, in our prime, Trev and I have talked about this. In our prime, I was a lot faster than Trevor and Vince. I mean, best time I ever had was a 4.59. Like I was a pretty good athlete. Like I played quarterback, but I got moved to receiver the last 3 games of my senior year of high school. And in the second game, I had a 5-touchdown game. You know what I mean? Like, I was a pretty good athlete back in the day. Don't look like it now, but I was. Trev still, even though I was faster then, Trev's still closer to his, whatever his slow time was. He said he's slow. I'm not saying it. Than I am to my fast or his slow time right now. So I would just hope I could finish the race. That would be my objective, is to finish. I don't care what my time was. Did I finish without broken body parts or torn muscles?
Yeah, I think the fastest time that I ever ran was a 4.79, and I thought I was cooking. I mean, that's just me. I have the mobility of an office chair on carpet. I'm not fast. Like I'm just, that's not me. Never has been me. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just I would be second by default. Like it's not just because I'm the superior. Like no, dude, it's just by default.
Cruising and I'm out at the 15. I'm writhing in pain, holding my hammy. Vince put up with like a hip thing. Sean Stires is like face down in the turf, just passed out. You know what I mean? Sean Davis just like screw this. I'm not doing this. He's walking off. You know what I mean? Like he was the only one smart enough to not do it. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's pretty much how it would go. It's pretty much how it would go. It'd be like some funny movie scene too. If they videoed it, it's like it'd all be slow motion. It's like I'm like, oh, it stumbles like, that'd be a funny scene. Very funny.
Yeah.
We also had something, Trev. A buddy of mine, Joe, just sent IB a $50. We have on the board, the IB message board, our IB store. It's actually, the store part is free, but there's a community fund donation that you can make. And he just sent a $50 donation because he said he's at work and he can't get into the show. He's going to go back later, but he had a super chat he wanted to give. So he did it that way. And then he sent me a question. And here's this question. He said, basically, let me find it here real quick. Where was this question? He said, all right, with Lathan Wissington committing and a lot of good backs high on Notre Dame, because remember, we reported that Notre Dame was the leader for all 3 that visited last weekend, Trey Segura, Isaiah Rogers, and Lathan Wissington. And then there's 2 more 27 kids visiting this weekend. His question was, do you see one jumping soon to try to get on board ahead of others? That was his question. So I thank you for the super chat, Joe. I really appreciate you, man. I do think that one of the 2 kids that visited this past weekend is going to decide very soon. I won't say who, because again, I don't want to take that moment away from him, but let's just say this. I've got a story written for another back and anticipating something to happen somewhat soon. So yes, I do believe, and we've talked about this a lot, Trev, this is not new. When there's nobody committed at your position, you don't have to rush to commit if you know where you want to go. Once a kid commits, it's like, okay, now I got to speed things up a little bit. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to happen at running back. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Getting into the second part of the Mailbag, Friday free-for-all Mailbag here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Something that we like to do to end the weeks here in the offseason is the Friday free-for-all Mailbag. You guys have been bringing the heat with the questions so far. I'm ready to keep this train rolling, man.
Yes, sir. Let's go with Aiden Banami.
When recruiting a kid, who's the main person college is getting in contact with? Is it their head coach? Do coaches ever reach out to a kid directly to start, or is that inappropriate?
Usually the first thing you'll do, it depends on what grade you're reaching out to, but a lot of times with a younger player, it's actually the coach first. Because you just can't, if you're talking to a freshman or sophomore, you can't contact them directly. You have to go through a coach. You have to go through a teacher, an administrator, somebody like that to get the player to then reach out to you. You can have, I believe you can have email and mail correspondence, like inviting a kid to a camp, things like that. I believe you can have that, but you can't have direct phone, text, or DM initiated conversation with a prospect who's not, past the, okay, now he's, junior year deadline. You can now reach out to him. So usually it is a coach that you'll reach out to. And then through that, you'll connect with a parent and things like that. And if you're a coach doing your job right and you're doing it the right way, you have a good relationship with his coach, his parents, and the young man. And so, yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, have you ever been one of those big shaker vibration plate machines they've got, or at least used to have, in the Notre Dame locker rooms, or do you have any idea what they're good for?
No clue. Do you have any idea what he's referring to, Trev?
No.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy. Can't help you with that one.
Another one from Ballpeen. My youngest brother is in his final high school musical as Captain Von Trapp this week in The Sound of Music. Do you enjoy musicals? And if so, what's your favorite one?
It's like with anything. I love movies, but there's movies I don't like. I'm not a fan of operas, but I've been to a couple that I really like. I like symphonies, but there's some that I haven't enjoyed. Musicals are like a lot of other things. Some of them I really like, some of them I don't. Sound of Music's a classic. I haven't seen it since I was a lot younger, but I was always a big fan of Fiddler on the Roof. Partly because that was the first one I was initiated to. I actually was in Fiddler on the Roof when I was in middle school as like a little side thing, like supporting cast. My sister and I were actually both in it. She's even younger than I am, but yeah, I think it's like with anything. I don't like heavy metal, but there's some heavy metal songs, or there's some talented musicians that do heavy metal that I'm like, hey, I'm not a big fan of Guns N' Roses, but you can't listen to Slash on the guitar and not be like, dude, shredding. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to necessarily, I don't like Metallica much, but there's some songs you're like, dude, that just hits. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why, but that song just hits. So, yeah, Sound of Music is one. Annie, that's another one that I really like. Trev, I don't know if that was like maybe, obviously it was way before you, but I don't know if it's something that's still prominent when you were growing up. But Annie was one that I actually rather liked as well. And no, I have not seen Cats, Gideon, so I can't tell you if I do or don't like Cats. So I never saw that one. Like, I never saw Chicago. There's the play Chicago, or musical Chicago, that they turned into a movie. There's a lot of them that I haven't seen, but those are some ones that I really like. Yeah.
Yeah, my parents were big musical people. They definitely weren't like the athletes of the family or anything. Ballpeen, that's cool that your brother's in that high school musical. That's pretty cool. My dad, I love theater. My dad directed plays for a while at Elkhart Civic Theater, and I would always go up and watch it. It was really cool.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones. I love Little Shop of Horrors. It's very silly. Basically, the antagonist in it is just a gigantic Venus flytrap that just.
I've seen the movie.
Yeah, like it's. But I like Little Shop of Horrors. That was one of the plays that he did. My mom loves Grease. I never really got into like Hairspray. That one was okay. I didn't really board that train. I was more Grease than Hairspray.
From a movie musical, I don't know it gets much better than Grease.
Yeah. Trying to think other musicals. I mean, if we're talking movies, I don't know if you want to consider it a musical, but School of Rock is pretty awesome. It's just a movie with a lot of music in it, but I don't know if I'd consider it a musical.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some good ones out there. But if I had to go with a favorite off the top of my head, I'd probably say Little Shop of Horrors. From Jay Melvin, Brian, you're a football X's and O's guy. What scheme is the Chris Ash defense more similar to? Elko, Clark Lee, Marcus Freeman, or Al Golden?
Good question. I would say Clark Lee. And the reason I would say that is he's very similar structurally to Elko and Clark Lee. They were more zone-oriented than Al Golden was. Al Golden was much heavier blitz packages, much more man than the others. All of them were based out of a 4-2-5, although Marcus Freeman ran a lot more 3-3 than in his day than he ever did 4-2. And I still remember that was one of the things I was critical of Coach Freeman early on in his D coordinator tenure. He did a lot of good things, but watching them go 3-3 stack with Isaiah Foskey playing as a stack linebacker was not the greatest idea in the world.
Yeah.
But they went away from that pretty quickly. But Clark Lee was more of a keep everything in front of you, bend but don't break. You know, didn't force a ton of turnovers, but also didn't give up a lot of big plays. Really valued, I think, being better against the run than Al Golden did. You know, they weren't always great against the run, but I kind of felt like when Clark Lee was Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, usually when they weren't good against the run, it had more to do with like they didn't have great players than it necessarily was. He didn't really care about stopping the run, but I think the defenses that Clark Lee ran at Notre Dame were pretty good. I mean, you look at this past year's run defense. I think the last defense that was as good as his run defense was, Trev, I believe was probably the 2020 defense was the closest statistically. I'd have to go back and look, but I believe that was the closest one statistically to what they were this past season. So that would be my answer on that one. Jay Melvin is Clark Lee. Now I think Clark Lee was a little bit more sound than what we saw from Chris Ash the last year. I don't think Clark Lee did as much read and react with his front seven as what Chris Ash asked them to do. So they're not direct comparisons. But if I'm comparing the schemes, I would argue that he's more similar to Clark Lee philosophically and scheme-wise, because your scheme is a byproduct of your philosophy. And I would say he's more similar to Clark Lee than, Mike Elko liked to do a lot more post-snap rolling and movement and things like that. He was a little bit more of a pressure guy than what Clark Lee was. Nothing like what Al Golden was, but
yeah.
But he would be next closest to Elko because Elko and Lee had similar philosophies. Just the execution of it looked a little bit different. But I would say more directly to Clark Lee. He was actually further away from Marcus Freeman than any of them. Because again, Marcus Freeman did a lot of 3 down fronts and things like that, scheme wise. So,
yeah, I'd be in that order. I'd probably go Clark Lee, Mike Elko, Al Golden, and then Freeman.
Yep. Good stuff. All right. Well, let's just get all these out of the way here, Trev.
From Ballpeen, if an adaptation had to be made for some famous sports movies into an on-ice format, which would you choose to have adapted? And sorry, Miracle on Ice is off limits.
A sports movie that had to get adapted into an on-ice format?
Mm-hmm.
Trev, I don't even know that I could. I have no idea. Have you thought of do you have an answer for this one?
I'm gonna go Waterboy on ice because I feel like Bobby Boucher on ice skates would be pretty funny.
Okay. People getting speared on ice, that'd be interesting. Oh man, goodness gracious. Okay, I got one. Does Angels in the Outfield count as a sports movie? Okay. Because there was less actual realistic. The problem is you're going to have less realism in sports because, like, how do you simulate football stuff on ice? That seems kind of dangerous and downright dangerous, Trev. I don't know if it's a good idea. I Field of Dreams? I'm trying to think of a sports movie that doesn't have a lot of sports action because hey, here we go. Okay, Miracle on Ice is off limits. Mighty Ducks. You didn't say Mighty Ducks was off limits, so Mighty Ducks. That would be the one that I would go. How about them apples, Trev? Mighty Ducks.
That's fair.
Thanks, Ballpeen.
Another one from Ballpeen. You must choose between running 50% of all offensive plays as either 4 verts or out of the I formation. Which would you choose? And does that answer change if Riley Leonard is under center?
Yes. No, it doesn't change if Riley Leonard's under center, because I feel like if you're putting Riley Leonard under center, you're taking away one of his best attributes. So, yeah, I would not have Riley Leonard under center. The reason that I would go with the 4 verts is easy, because 4 verts is built to have adaptations to it. You call 4 verts, they're not all running verticals no matter what. They're all basically option routes if you're teaching it right. So whenever you see Notre Dame run and they run 4 guys vertically and they all stop against cover 4, they didn't call all stops. They called 4 verts. And then you're converting the corner bails. I'm hitching up at a certain yardage down the field. If I'm running a seam and the safety bails and I'm not getting ridden by the inside guy, then I'm gonna hitch it up. I'm gonna turn it into an option route, a middle, inside option route. So I actually have a lot of variance. You could call 4 verts a lot in a game if you wanted to. I can attack cover 2 with it in certain ways. I can attack cover 4 with it in certain ways. I can certainly attack cover 3 with it. I can attack man with it. There's a lot of things I can do. And then out of it, I could also run play action, put some different things on it, and then the other 50%, run game, and I'm doing different things in the pass game. So yeah, I would have no problem running a bunch of 4 verts in a game. Now, I would never run a game where 50% of my calls are 4 verts. But I would much rather run a bunch of 4 verts than a bunch of I formation.
Same page over here.
You know what my exception would be, Trev?
If Tony Rice was your quarterback?
Who?
If Tony Rice was your quarterback?
Oh, definitely then. Yeah, that's a good one, Trev. My exception would be if for whatever reason the circumstances of games means half of my plays are run from inside the 10-yard line, then that's fine. But I don't think that's the spirit of the question.
Sure.
Because I don't mind going I formation in inside the 10-yard line. I actually think there's some advantage, even with a guy like Riley Leonard, because now my bootleg with Riley Leonard is a whole lot more effective at the 5 than it is the 50.
Yeah. From Jay Melvin, out of these 3 suspenseful thriller movies, what is your favorite? Fatal Attraction, The Silence of the Lambs, or The Shining?
I think they were all pretty awful. Like, they're all very not like the Silence of the Lambs would be the one I'd probably like the best, but I'm not a big fan of that genre. I didn't like The Shining. I thought it was weird. Yeah, I wasn't a big Shining fan. I'm not. I read a lot of Stephen King books as a kid. And I think that's part of the problem too, is a lot of times I read the books before I watched the movies, and the movies just didn't do it for me. But Silence of the Lambs, I don't know that I remember seeing Fatal Attraction, to be honest with you. So I can't really comment on that one. But of the other 2, definitely I'd take Silence of the Lambs. And like, I didn't love like the like just the type of movie it was. It just wasn't my type of movie. But the acting in Silence of the Lambs was exceptional. Anthony Hopkins is an exceptional actor. So yeah, probably that one. That'd be my answer. I also think Jack Nicholson's a very overrated actor. And I wasn't a big fan of The Shining.
Yeah, I'd probably go I'll probably go The Silence of the Lambs, but The Shining is a close second for me. I think that's a classic movie. So one of the 2, and then I haven't seen Fatal Attraction. So, but I love Silence of the Lambs. That's a good movie too. From Ballpeen, which is the best simple grain between oats, rice, quinoa, and corn, and why is it rice?
Well, I mean, if you're saying best as far as like what's the healthiest, wouldn't that probably be quinoa? Rice, I would say, is the best grain, because I just feel like it's a more versatile food to have with food. It's a versatile grain to have with food. You can do so much more with rice, in my opinion, than I could with the others, because I'm not a big quinoa fan. Corn, I like corn. It's just the way that it's modified now. It just doesn't have the nutrients it used to have. And I don't eat a lot of oats because I don't eat a lot of bread anymore. So that one would be out. But I'd probably say rice. Here's something that I learned, Trev, as I'm trying to get healthier because I love rice. But the problem with rice for someone like me who has a lot of sugar and different things is when you cook and eat rice right away, it spikes your blood sugar, obviously. So I heard somebody say this, and so I actually studied it, and I was like, there's no way that's true. But if you cook rice or bread or whatever, and then you put it in the fridge for at least 24 hours, when you take it out and eat it, even if you heat it up and eat it, it does not spike your blood sugar because the way that the starch transforms in the cooling process changes the way it interacts in your body. Look it up. It's pretty interesting. So, yeah. Very fascinating. So it's still not necessarily great for you if you're someone who's trying to cut back on all the sugar like that I am. But if you're going to eat it, that's the way to eat it. Thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that till about a month ago.
I don't know, man. I'd probably rice because it's the most versatile.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you can out of all of those, I feel like rice you can have for like multiple meals. You know what I'm saying? Like oats, I feel like is breakfast. Like I'm not having oats for dinner. Quinoa is overrated. Corn, I think I only have with dinner. But man,
corn for me is the answer on the Thanksgiving every year because I'm a big fan of mashed potatoes and corn. I don't eat mashed potatoes and gravy. I eat mashed potatoes and corn, and I love corn and mashed potatoes. That's really it. I don't really eat a lot of corn outside of that. I mean, it's summer when we have like a cookout, I'll have some corn on the cob. But yeah, that's it.
I love Mexican street corn. It's so good. Oh, it's fantastic. But yeah, I'm going with rice.
Beefeater said, What if I puff up the rice and cover it in marshmallows? Will that spike my blood sugar a little bit, buddy? Especially if you put the chocolate on top of it, just go all into it. Yeah, that'll spike your blood sugar a little bit. Yeah, that's funny. That's really funny.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, you've mentioned before about Alabama being bad on the D-line and misusing guys like Keon or James Smith. Is it a coach or scheme problem, and do you think it will continue to hurt them?
It's yeah. I mean, to me, the coaching and the scheme problem is the same. I don't know that I have said that they misused James Smith. I think James Smith was wrong a lot in things that he was doing and misaligned and things like that, and that was a bigger problem. I don't think they used Keon effectively and used him well. But the bigger issue, Trev, is more so that they would just be lined up wrong so often on defense. And you could just tell that they were lined up wrong. And I think that's a coaching issue. But there's also some scheme deficiencies that I think they have that prevents them from getting the most out of the talent that they do possess. So I think it's a little bit of both. And if it continues, will it hurt them? Absolutely. The thing that I will say is I do think their roster for 2026 is built a little bit more to execute the stuff he wants to do than what they did the last couple of years. But that's a lot of talent to lose from the front seven in one offseason, Trev. I mean, not just the transfers, James Smith and Keon, but also you lose LT Overton, you lose Tim Keenan. That's a lot to lose. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of depth. You lose some very experienced starters. So there's a lot that they're going to have to replace. But schematically, there's some things that can be changed. From ICURN with Irish Luck. Watching Lathan Ransom highlights, I feel like I was watching Ashton Genty run with the Quinshon Judkins body.
Yeah, I think he's got a little bit more speed than Ashton Genty. I like that comparison. I think that's fair. I think that's a good one, ICU. I think he's got a lot more speed than both of those guys. A lot more speed.
Yeah, agreed. Neither of those guys were 10-5 track guys. I'm sticking with my comp that I had a couple nights ago. I think he's Tony Jones Jr. if Tony Jones Jr. ran a 10.5 in track.
I've used that multiple times, Trev, by the way. I give you credit every time because I don't want to steal something, but I've used that many times. People say the comp, and I say, I said something like kind of like a faster Kedron Young. I said, but Trev had this really good one. It's Tony Jones with 10.5 speed, and I think that one makes a lot of sense. Somebody else was like Aldrich with more speed, and I was like, I don't really see that. A little different body type, a little different running style. I think the Tony Jones Jr. was really good. Really good.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Aldrich was very top heavy. Like, he didn't have the legs of a 225-pound running back. He had the upper body.
He didn't run with great power in like that. He would rather hurdle you than run over you.
Yep. From BFast, you mentioned three running backs visited on junior day and it went well. How many does Notre Dame look to take in the class? Was there any feeling from Wisington to commit in order to secure a spot?
So no, he did not commit to secure a spot. He committed because he knew this is where he wanted to be. Do I think the fact that they were that they had all three on the same weekend didn't have an impact on that? I'd be lying to you if I said that it did. Was that said to us directly? No, it wasn't said to us directly, but I've been doing this a long time. And that was absolutely a strategic move to do that. But I think Lathan's thing was he just knew where he wanted to go. And you could there were little, like, I won't say, again, I don't like to pretend I have like this, I knew something before it happened. Then after the fact, you're like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I shouldn't tell anyone on the planet because, I didn't want to take it away. Like, okay, sure, buddy. If you look back now at some of the comments he made coming into the visit, you're like, okay, I see that comment differently now. And okay, now I can see why that might lead someone to believe he's going to commit. And the reason I don't think I read it the way that I do now is because I just didn't think a kid like that was going to come to Notre Dame. I believe this was his first visit to campus and commit that quickly when Texas is on him, Florida's on him, LSU. I saw an article like a week before he committed, LSU was pushing hard for him. You're like, well, a kid like that's not just going to come up having never visited and commit, right? And he did. And I don't think it was because, oh, crap, I want to secure a spot. Like, I think it's because he wanted to commit, and maybe that made him decide to do it like when he did. But I think the decision was made because he's like, this is where I want to be. And he doesn't strike me as someone who like necessarily like, and this is what I like about all three of the running backs. Trey Segura strikes me the same way. So does Isaiah Rodgers, where I think they all want to make the right decision. They're willing to take their time if need be, but none of them strike me as kids that are like, I love the recruiting process, and so I'm going to drag this out. When you know, and if other circumstances lead to you making that announcement a little bit before, then you do that. And so, and I do, like I said, when he committed, Trev, we said in that show, I'd be fine if they only take one back in this class, but we believed that Notre Dame wanted to take two and that they would take the first one that wanted to pop amongst that group of three.
Makes sense. From Joseph Parr, if you could handpick any of the quarterbacks Notre Dame has offered for the 2027 class, who would it be?
This is another one, Joe. I'm fine with all three of them. I'm truly happy with all three of them. I think that Champ Mons has the highest upside. I think Camden Leati has the highest floor. And Davin Davidson's in there. He definitely has the lowest floor, but he could at least contend for maybe having the highest ceiling. I don't know if Camden's ceiling is quite as high as maybe the other two, but when you've got Noah Grubbs and Teddy Girard ahead of you, I want a high floor guy in this class. I really do. And I also like the fact that Camden brings the biggest style variation than the other two that they got last year. He is a very different type of quarterback than Teddy Girard and Noah Grubbs. And I think that factors into a little bit why I would be comfortable maybe pushing for him a little bit more, even though in a ranking, maybe he's not my number one ranked guy, but I think he makes the most sense in this class. But I'd be happy with any of the three. Truly happy with any of the three. The big hang up I have on Champ is I don't like quarterbacks that reclassify up. I don't. I said I didn't like that Teddy Girard did that, but I understood it. And so I definitely don't like it when they do it, like earlier. But and that's a big, it's a bit of a concern I have with Champ. And it's a concern I have with Teddy. Teddy was basically a 2-year starter in high school, I believe, correct? He started as a sophomore. Let me go look. Maybe he was a 3-year starter, and I just forgot that he started as a freshman. Let me go look that up real quick. Give me a second. All right, Teddy Gerard. All right, let me go see here. So they only have – that's dumb. Max Preps only has his stats for North Cobb High School. Let me go Christian, see if they have stats on that. So he started obviously last year for North Cobb. Was he a 2-year start? Yeah, okay, so I'm wrong. Teddy was a 3-year starter in high school. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But yes, overall, I don't love it when quarterbacks reclassify up.
That's fair. Sidebar, the Notre Dame women's team is playing right now. They have a 4-point lead against Vanderbilt at the start of the second quarter, which isn't bad. FanDuel, I think at the start of the game, still had them as 2.5-point dogs. So that's not bad. That's not bad to be up.
15-11, I'm looking at it right now. Low scoring first quarter there, Trev. So let's see. Hannah's got 6. Cass Prosper is going to be the key. If they win this game, Cass Prosper is going to have to play a very important role.
Yeah, 100%.
Very important role. Vandy's just 2 of 12 shooting so far. Hopefully that continues. They had 11 turnovers in the first quarter.
Yeah, having the same amount
Hannah
of turnovers as points is rough.
Yeah, Hannah had 4 flipping steals in the first quarter.
Good Lord.
She's really good.
From Juan Delgado, what kind of first offensive drive do you want to have against Wisconsin? Opening run for a touchdown, an opening passing touchdown like Purdue in 2025, or a 5 to 7 minute drive down the field for a touchdown?
Honestly, okay. If of those 3, I would love it if on the first play of the game, Notre Dame ran a play action pass for a 75-yard touchdown. I just feel like that's going to set the tone for the entire season. Like, hey, guys, we're a very different football team. You're going to have to respect our throwing ability. And now you got to back off a little bit. And then the next series, I'm just going to run the backs right at you. That's what I would love to see them do.
I saw this question come in, Juan. This is a heck of a question. And I've been thinking about it in the back of my mind since it got put in. And I'm actually going a different route here. This is weird because I'm the quarterback guy.
Mm-hmm. Sell out.
I know. It's just because we were talking about speed, and then I started daydreaming about if I had running back speed, and then I was like, that'd be kind of cool. No, but there's been a lot of talk about this offense because there's no Jay Love or Jadarian Price anymore. I think it would be kind of poetic to come out on the first drive against Wisconsin and have like 5 straight runs and they all go for at least like 15 yards and then you
just gash them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you going to do without Jeremiah Love and Jadarian? And it's because we know what CJ can do.
Yeah.
And then the next drive they open it up. It's like, oh, hey, by the way, we also have Faison and Greathouse and Graham. And
we see it the same way, but reversed.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. I mean, that'd be interesting. Just like 5 straight runs of just like CJ throws a little 5-yard speed cut, but your other 5 plays are just runs. And it's like 8, 12, 15. And then you break one off for 20 to pop it in. Like, okay, yeah, Notre Dame can still run the ball. It would also be the O-line setting the tone in that game as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. I still want to, drop back and throw a bomb and be like, hey, guys, you can't defend us this year the way you did last year. I'm very curious to see how Wisconsin does defend Notre Dame early in that game. Are they going to come out and say, hey, this is still Notre Dame, they still run the football? Or are they going to come out and say, we're not afraid of those backs or that line? We're not going to let CJ beat us. I'm very curious to see that.
Yeah, I'm prediction. I'm going with the latter. I think that they're going to have that mindset that for whatever reason USC had against Notre Dame. We're not going to let CJ beat us in the rain. And then they ran for over 300 yards. Not upset about it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of teams will do that.
Yeah, make the run game beat them. So kind of the reverse of what we saw this year.
Yeah.
So basically, who was the team that did that? It was USC. So basically come out and kind of do what USC did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Trev, let's get here one more before we go into our final segment of the show. Here's from Crash This Train.
There's a famous NHL quote from a coach that says, quote, "Goalies are like oxygen. I don't really know whether I have it until I need it." What football position fits that quote?
Oh, man. What? Kicker? I mean, honestly, kicker. I'm dead serious. You know what you don't have of snap one of most every other position. I mean, kicker's probably the one. You don't really, you know, I don't know really whether I have it until I need it. Let's just say this. Every other position on the football field, all 22 skill, positions, offense and defense, you get tested in the spring and in fall camp. Physically tested, because the biggest challenge for me as a defensive lineman is getting my face punched in every snap by an offensive lineman. Not that there's 80,000 people watching it happen. That only adds to the torment. I don't care if a kicker goes 10 of 10 in a quiet practice field, no media and people around him. I care what he does in front of 80,000 people. So yeah, you don't really know what you have until you need it.
Yeah, I kicker is number one for sure, and I think a distant second is also on special teams, and I would argue that'd be like a good returner. Like, you can put guys back there that you think have like the tools to be a good returner, but I doubt in practices they're doing full speed kickoffs or full speed punt returns. So I would put at a distant second a good kick returner.
All right.
Brian, as we get into the final part of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we got the Friday free-for-all mailbag going on. Our daily listeners have been bringing it, not to the surprise of either of us, but I'm ready to land this plane and answer some more questions. Starting it off with Jay Melvin. Brian, I was watching the guy on Crane & Co. you debated showing some Daren Mensa spring film. Who do you think is a good comp for him? Cam Moore, Dante Moore, CJ Carr, or someone else?
Of those three, I'd probably say Dante Moore is closer to a comp for him. Daren Mensa is a solid athlete, but he's not a runner. Cam Ward was a legitimate runner. I don't know that Cam maybe used his legs as much as I would have liked for him to always have used his legs. I wish sometimes he would have used his legs a little bit more, but he still had 204 rushing yards in his last year at Miami. I think he probably could have used his legs a little bit more. When you look at Daren Mensa last year, Trev, he's a quality athlete, but he had minus 32 yards rushing last year at Duke. And he had only 132 at Tulane. He wants to sit in the pocket and throw the football. And so that's why I'd say Dante's that way too. Dante's a better athlete. The biggest play Dante made in the win over Iowa was a run. A scramble for a big play because the weather was so bad. So I'd say he probably is closer to Dante than any others. Dante and CJ Carr are the two most natural throwers in the country this year. And I wouldn't put Daren quite in that category, but I think he compares closer to Dante than he does Cam or CJ.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. From Irish Fan 88, happy Friday, boys. Any thoughts on what's happening to men's basketball right now? Does Pete Bavacqua just not care much about hoops, or are they using all NIL resources on football?
No, I don't know that it's either one of those things, guys, to be completely honest with you. I think there's a lot of issues with the basketball program right now, but you can't deny that NIL is not a problem. I had somebody send me an email the other day, and I guess Vince and Sean were talking about the basketball team and how they got to spend more money, and that's true. And he's like, no, that's not it. It's all on Shrewsbury. And I'm like, well, that's also partially true. You and I have talked about this. I don't like the way he constructed his roster, where if Marcus Burton gets hurt, something he has done before, who's your point guard? Jalen Harrelson? That's poor roster construction. I'm sorry, it just is. And, I continuing to have like no post scoring presence has been a problem, and great. You've got a bunch of rebounders. They're just not scoring threats. It's just, I don't think he's necessarily built the roster in a great way, but at the same time, part of that is resources. Like these guys that are leaving aren't leaving just because they don't like playing for Micah Shrewsbury or whatever else. They're leaving because they're going to make way more money somewhere else than they will at Notre Dame. That's a fact. Both of those things can be true. You can say Micah Shrewsbury needs to do a better job as a coach, but also say they also need to do a better job from a ability to say, hey, look, if you're going to care about basketball, you got to spend more. And even more so, spend more to keep the players you recruited at a high school. There's no reason to lose Garrett Sundra. If you want to keep him, you should keep him. Same with Ryder Frost. Now maybe he's leaving because of playing time. I'm just saying, like, if those guys are leaving because of money, then then that's a problem. I'm not saying they all are leaving because of money. I'm simply saying if you're going to lose a guy, by the way, it's now 25-13 Notre Dame. But if you're going to lose a guy, Trev, lose a guy because he's not playing. Don't lose a guy because you're not going to, being willing to spend the money to keep him. You know what I mean? And I think that's a reality in college basketball that this team is going to have to understand. And you and I have said this for years. People have asked, why can't Notre Dame get 5-star players in basketball? And they rarely get them. Jalen Harrelson was one. I think the last one they got before that was like Demetrius Jackson, and it rarely happens. And my answer is because the entire pitch, and we've said this before, the entire pitch that works for every other sport on campus means nothing with big-time basketball players. And if anything, it's a hindrance. Wait a minute. I'm only going to be on school for 2 semesters. Why do I have to go to class the second semester or the first semester? Like, why do I got to take academics seriously? Why do I got to go to in-person classes? All those kind of things that make Notre Dame unique are actually a hindrance a little bit, Trev, when you think about the idea of big-time basketball players. They just don't care about that stuff. And so you're going to have to – what keeps them caring? NIL packages. How are you going to develop them as basketball players? It's different for football. As a football – Lathan Wissington's going to come to Notre Dame. Let me use a different example. Joey O'Brien's going to come to Notre Dame with the idea that I can't go play professionally for 3 years. So at Notre Dame, I want to make sure that obviously NIL, Notre Dame can't offer him a gift card to Golden Corral and say, okay, here's your NIL package and expect him to come to Notre Dame, right? I don't care how good the academics are. You've got to at least be in the ballpark of what's going to make the kid taken care of and feel valued. You pitch the NIL stuff. You pitch the academic stuff. You pitch the ability to be developed as on and off the field. Hey, we put this many safeties in the NFL. The 4 for 40 is going to hit a whole lot harder for a kid like Joey O'Brien than it is going to be for a top 20 overall national basketball player. I'm watching the Arkansas game last night. By the way, the first 2 games for the Sweet 16 were unbelievably good. But I'm watching this point guard for Arkansas, and I'm thinking, if Notre Dame tried to recruit this kid last year, what could they have used to pitch it? He's from Detroit, played at IMG. None of the things that Mike Bray used to sell to basketball players 20 years ago mean a hill of beans to a kid like that. Well, they're able to do that in women's basketball. Yeah. Why? Because in women's basketball, you can't go pro for 3 years. It's like it's like it is in college football. Now, NIL is a thing, but so they're still going to jump from place to place. But you're more willing to be receptive to if you're a 5-star girls basketball player, the 4 for 40 thing is going to mean a whole lot more to you than it is for a 5-star men's basketball player because of the rules of that tell you when you can or cannot go play professionally. It has nothing to do with the NCAA. It's when you're allowed to leave to go play professionally. So it just means nothing to elite men's basketball players. And if you're going to recruit guys who aren't that, then you better make sure you're keeping as many of those guys as possible in there, because you're not going to go get the kids that Michigan's going out and getting in the portal in basketball because they cost too much. So recruit really good players that you can get, and then make sure you're doing the best you can to keep them in school, and then go supplement them with Carson Touts and who was the name of the kid they got from Princeton last year, the shooter?
Matt Alaco.
Guys like that mean a whole lot more when they are not your 1 or 2. There's supplements around. You keep Sir Muhammad for 3 or 4 years. You keep Jalen Harrelson for a couple of years. You keep Cole Serta for a couple of years. You keep, Ryder Frost. You see what I'm saying? Like, so that's to me is why the basketball team is struggling. It's not just Micah Shrewsbury. It's not just NIL. It's the the two of them together right now aren't getting it done in basketball. But it's not that they don't care.
Yeah, agreed. There are two problems with the Notre Dame men's basketball program in my eyes. One, it's a culture thing. You can't have a head coach physically going after referees after games, whether you agree or disagree with the call or not. Like, that just can't.
He lost his composure several times this year.
That can't happen. That's bad for the culture. Two, it comes down to money. In whatever sense that you want to talk about, like whether it's retention, which Brian and I 100% agree with what you're talking about. You just worked your butt off to get the top recruiting class that you have had in program history. Mm-hmm. You spend the money to keep those guys, or you need to figure out what you're going to do in the transfer portal. Because with all due respect to guys like Madalaco and Carson Tout, bringing in somebody from Northern Arizona and Princeton is not going to put you over the top.
Yep.
It won't. Now, I'm not saying you try to go get Braden Smith from Purdue. That's you find the in between. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But that's the difference. The culture at Purdue's basketball program is different. Those are a bunch of 4-year guys.
Yep.
Trey Kaufman-Renn wasn't in high school last year. Braden Smith wasn't in high school last year. Fletcher Lawyer's a 4-year starter. So that's one of the things that made Mike Bray's teams great, is because you got somebody like a Pat Connaughton, you got somebody like a Jaron Grant, you got somebody like a Zach August that really started to break out in year 2 and year 3. And that's why you had back-to-back Elite 8 and a Sweet 16 team. You had guys like that. But the culture needs to be fixed, and they have to be willing to spend money in some capacity.
Yep. Because, Trev, Purdue is not starting those guys because they just love Purdue so much that they're staying for free.
Right.
And that's not what you said. But your culture part is important, but then you also have to go make sure that you're doing what it takes to keep them.
Correct.
Because in college basketball, it is possible to go out there and have guys that have been in school for a while, right? Like, there's this chart that comes out every year, the last few years, where they show like the starting lineup of every Sweet 16 team, and they just do it by the logo of where they started their college careers. And for some of them, you're like, oh yeah, five of the starters for Michigan State started their careers at Michigan State. 4 of Purdue's 5 starters started at Purdue. 4 of 5 for Duke started there. 4 of 5 for Houston. 4 of 5 for Arizona. 4 of 5 for Alabama. But it's like, but who are those 4 for Duke? They're a whole lot different type of high school recruits than the 4 kids that have been there for 4 years at Purdue. Not that those guys weren't really good basketball players, but you got the Boozer twins and Arkansas. Houston, I think 3 of their starters are true freshmen that were top 20 national recruits and stuff like that. Somebody put the chat 0 for Michigan. If you don't follow college basketball, you're going to look at Michigan like, I have no clue who Michigan's starting, which one Michigan is, other than process of elimination. I have no clue who Michigan's team is. None. And like, okay, I think I can figure it out. Like, okay, like here's where Michigan starting 5 started their college careers. Illinois, it's Morris Johnson. UAB, I think that's Luxembourg, right? North Carolina, that's the big center they have, Mara. UCLA, actually, I don't even know who that is. North Carolina is the point guard, Elliot Cadeau. The UCLA is this big center, Mara, and then Texas Tech is Namari Burnett. Not one kid began his career at Michigan. Now, what did Michigan have, though? They had 3 kids coming off the bench that were really good scorers. LJ Carson, who's hurt, Trey McKinney, and Will Cheddar, who were all kids that they recruited. And they had key roles. But, like, you want to know why Ryder Frost is leaving, Trev? He played 6 minutes a game. But, like, when Carson Tout and Madalaca can really help your basketball team go over the next level? When what you're missing is just that rebounder and that scorer off the bench, because Ryder Frost is a junior and Sir Muhammad's a senior and Jalen Harrelson's a junior and Cole Serta's a senior, right? Garrett Sunders a senior. When all those kids are now veterans, then those guys come in and they're the niche pieces that help put you over the top in your league. Because you were 4th last year, now you jump up to 2nd because those little extra pieces help you a little bit. But you've got to Notre Dame's going to have to be able to recruit and keep players. They're not going to be able to build a roster the same way that Michigan does. I love your example, Trev, of Purdue, because that's what Notre Dame should be striving to be in basketball. Get good players, keep them, develop them, make sure that they're not leaving because you took care of them and your culture such that a Ryder Frost is willing to play 6 minutes a game because he knows that next year I'm going to get this opportunity to do such and such and such and such. That's why the football team has that. That's why the football team didn't lose certain players after their freshman years, despite not playing as much as they hoped that they would. So
100%. That's where the culture piece comes in, man.
Yeah, and somebody just said if spending 10 to 13 more on basketball to be decent means 10 million less for football pass. That's not how it works, though. I mean, that only matters for like the rev share piece. There's other things you can do, in my opinion. However, I will say this: if I'm Notre Dame and I'm like, we've got 20 million to spend on basketball, I'm going to make sure that the women's team has above and beyond what they need before I'm going to do that for the men's team. As I've said before, and it's just the realities of the sport. Because I know that my X million dollars to go get a 5-star women's basketball player is going to likely result in me having Hannah Hidalgo for 3 or 4 years than it is to have Jalen Harrelson for 3 or 4 years. Because if Jalen Harrelson is everything we think he's going to be, you get him for 2 years at the most, and then where's he going? You know, he's going to the national NBA. So I just think and I think women's basketball is just traditionally, and when I say traditionally, I mean like the last 20 years, traditionally the better sport. And they're one of the few women's basketball teams that has the opportunity to be a revenue creator, where a lot of women's basketball teams don't.
Yeah, the biggest difference is other programs across the country in women's basketball are striving to be like Notre Dame. Notre Dame in men's basketball is striving to be like other programs. That's right. The biggest separator.
Yep. I hope Coach Shrewsbury get it turned around, because I've heard a lot of good things about him as a guy, as a person. I think he cares about his players, but he's got to find some answers real fast, Trev.
Yeah. From BFast, has Indiana caused any issues on recruiting in Indiana with their recent success? I only hear about their portal success.
No, I think Indiana's high school recruiting has improved. They're not causing any issues for Notre Dame, but not yet. I think Indiana's going to create more problems for Notre Dame down the road than they are now. I don't think they're ever going to really hurt Notre Dame, but the national championship was big, but I don't know that it's moved the needle a ton for beating guys like Notre Dame and Ohio State for kids. But I mean, even last year, you look at the On3 rankings, Indiana was 30th. They signed 22 high school recruits. They signed 7 4-star kids. They got some good football players, but the good football players they got were guys that were still kind of like Gabe Hill's a really good player. If Notre Dame wanted Gabe Hill, he'd have gone to Notre Dame. And they're getting kind of guys like that, which is fine. That's what their entire roster was built with last year. You know what I mean? It's not like Aiden Fisher was like, and Mikhail Kamara were like, I know that Notre Dame wanted me, but I just felt like James Madison was the place.
I mean, they had a guy that would have stayed at Notre Dame if Notre Dame wanted him back, and Pat Coogan, and then he went to Indiana. Like that's right. That's
Josh Burnham's another one. But from high school recruiting, they haven't created any issues to this point in time. Like, they're in it with Monshin Sales. Like, they're legitimately in it. They're not the reason Notre Dame's not going to get that kid. That kid had no interest in Notre Dame whatsoever. Like, at all. So, they haven't created those issues yet. I think another playoff run this year could, maybe they get to the playoffs again and even get knocked out in the first round or win a game. Now all of a sudden it's more finalized. Like, oh wow, okay, they're really here to stay. I think that could maybe for a couple kids. But the other thing is Notre Dame doesn't really recruit in-state a whole lot. They don't.
From Archer, a resident Ohio State fan, do you think missing out on guys like Justin Scott, Taylon Taylor, Carnell Tate, and Marquise Lightfoot will impact Notre Dame's future recruiting efforts around Chicago?
No, it won't have any impact. They didn't miss those kids for nefarious reasons. They couldn't get Marquise Lightfoot if they wanted him. Getting Carnell Tate, hurt their – I'll say this. If it hurts their football team, it'll simply because – let's say their football team isn't good enough, and it's because they're just one D tackle away. And boy, if they had Justin Scott, that would be the way it hurt it. But there's no negativity like, oh, Notre Dame did a bad job recruiting this kid or that kid. I'd be willing to bet you that if Marcus Freeman was established as the head coach at Notre Dame when Carnell Tate was coming out, I think they'd have had a much better shot. But the problem is, for a good chunk of his recruitment, it was Brian Kelly that was building that one, and that was just didn't go over well.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
From Fourth and Gold, I like that name. What is your prediction for the two deep at field, slot, and boundary wide receiver at the start of the season? And what about your preferred two deep is if different than prediction?
Fourth and goal. This is a very fair question. I don't really care about preferred. I used to put a lot more into that, but the reason why is because I felt like the previous staff made a lot of bad decisions with who they played. And so I cared more about, I can't believe you're not playing this kid. I don't have that same doubt in the current stuff. Now, do I like how Mike Brown necessarily pushed Will Pauling last year? No, but that hasn't really been an overall issue. I just think that was more of he really was sold on Will Pauling because he recruited him out of high school. He had that relationship and all those kind of things. So I don't have, my preferred two deep is the guys that play the best and give them the best chance to dominate. That really is it. And it doesn't go beyond that. So my prediction right now, and I don't have necessarily at some of these, I don't have a who's first or second. I think if I were projecting a two deep today, my W would be some combination of Micah Gilbert and Quincy Porter. My field would be some combination of four guys, some that can play multiple spots. It'll be some combination of Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, I'm thinking inside out, Mylan Graham, and Elijah Burris. Where you could say Mylan Graham could play both, Jaden Greathouse can play both, Jordan Faison can play both. Elijah Burris is more of a pure outside guy that maybe could also play some W. But I think those four right now would be the combination. I don't know that any of the other Greathouse will be listed in the slot. I could see on a two deep having a Logan Saldate or something like that listed as number 2. But in reality, when it's not Greathouse on the field, it's either going to be Jordan Faison or Mylan Graham in a situation like that. But from what I've been told about Bubba Frazier, he is a freshman early on that's pushing for a legit two-deep role. Early on. It's early. But that would be the 6 that as of right now, today, if we had to play a game tomorrow, my 6 receivers, assuming everybody's healthy since you are projecting, Quincy Porter, Micah Gilbert, Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, Elijah Burris, and Mylan Graham. In any order, not who's 1, who's 2, doesn't matter. That would be my 2 deep. And one thing I'll say about the preferred 2 deep, I would love it if Cam Williams forced his way into the 2 deep. And it's not because I like Cam. It's that I still believe, and I know I'm not the only person that believes this. I know people at Notre Dame that believe this. I still believe he's the most physically gifted receiver they have. And if he's in the 2 deep with the talent they have, it's because he's earned it. And I think that would bode well for the team. But if he's not, that's still a really talented 6 guys.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you are. From Domer Grizz, happy Friday. Now that you've seen Aaron Henry in action for 2 viewing windows, how would you compare his style for what he emphasizes compared to Mike Mickens?
Very similar. He's a nonstop teacher. You really can't hear him. You see him talking to players. You see him coaching guys up. You can't really hear it because he's not like a screamer. He's always in their ear next to him, showing them what he's talking about. Like he's on top of them. It's like, Coach, man, give me some space, man. You're like always on me. But it's because he's there and he's demonstrating he's in their ear, not screaming across the room. Emphasizes footwork a ton, using hands properly a ton, getting in proper phase. I mean, we're not seeing a whole lot of things different from him and how he acts and conducts himself than we saw from Mike Mickens. And I got a chance to know Mike Mickens during his tenure at Notre Dame, and you learn about him. He really cares about developing young men and on and off the field. That's exactly what my sources that were not tied to Notre Dame. They were not Notre Dame people that I reached out to, Big Ten people, coaches, people in that area. And I say, hey, talk to me about Aaron Henry. And it's almost as if no, I didn't ask you to describe Mike Mickens. I asked you to describe Aaron Henry. Yeah, I was. Oh, okay. So I think the transition has been really smooth. I haven't been able to tell a lot of the difference. Now, we'll see if the actual performance lives up to that standard. But as far as his style of coaching and the things he emphasizes, great hand technique, using your hand, great footwork, using your hands properly, proper spacing, proper alignment, things like that. It doesn't look any different, Trev, than it did under Mike Mickens as far as how they go about their business. Now we need to see if Aaron Henry's secondary can play as well as the Mike Mickens secondary.
Yep, 100%. 100%. From Double Bogey Like a Champ, a lot has been made about the 2026 recruiting class and how good it is. Do you guys have a sleeper in this class that you feel is being overlooked?
You want to take a shot at that one, Trev?
Gosh, that's being overlooked. I mean, one of the guys that you just mentioned, Bubba Frazier, doesn't get as much attention, like in terms of the media, compared to guys like Cade and Finley outside of our circle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have been pumping that one for a while, but you are correct. Outside of IB, I agree with you.
Another one on defense that really surprised me. I mean, I was sleeping on him is Nick Reddish. He really performed well at nickel, looked very comfortable there. I think he's being slept on. Then I think you could probably go with one of the offensive linemen. I think Sullivan Garvin, for what he's doing at the center position, isn't getting talked about enough. So off the top of my head, those are probably some of the ones that I would say.
Couple others. Preston Frizel is a really talented kid that doesn't get talked enough about because of Ian Premer.
Yeah.
It's just one drill, and there was no pads on, but Jacoby Clapper is more explosive athletically than I thought he was going to be, and he has already – it would seem he has fallen absolutely in love, with the weight room. A lot of young men, teenage boys, Trev, we were there. You go off to college and you fall in love with some girl your first semester, right? I feel like Jacoby Clapper's first love when he got to Notre Dame was the weight room. That kid looks jacked up. And like when I saw that he was listed at 230, I was like, that guy went from 209 to 230. And then you see him like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, he's jacked. And then just moved really well. That's all we can see. So, and I wasn't super, super high on Jacoby Clapper, so it was good to actually see that. But Nick Reddish is one that I would say for us, we didn't talk enough about for how good he looked early on. Yeah.
100%. From Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, with the early showing of talent and strength from the wide receiver room, if that trend stays, could we see a wide receiver 1 group and a 1A group go drives like we used to see Love and Price? Thank you, IB, for the prayers.
Yeah, I'm make sure. And dude, we're Josh, we're so happy to hear that the procedure with your daughter went well and that she's good to go. So I'm really thankful that you brought that to our attention and asked for prayer with her and that Dominique is doing good, man. So I appreciate you sharing that for sure. And you tell her that we're thinking about her and praying for her and we're happy she's doing well. But am I reading this correctly, Trev, that basically it's like wide receiver group, meaning like there's those starters, but then also that next group is kind of 1B in that you can go a series and have them out there and you're not missing a beat, kind of like we had with Love. Is that how you're taking that question?
Yes, sir.
I absolutely think we could see that. Absolutely think we could see that.
Yep.
Would not shock me at all.
With more interchangeability, because obviously in the running backs, it's just one guy or the other. But, I mean, let's just play this out hypothetically and say group 1 is Micah Gilbert in the boundary, Jaden Greathouse in the slot, and Jordan Faison to the field. And then group 2 is Quincy Porter to the boundary, and then you got Mylan Graham to the field, Elijah Burst to the field, Mylan Graham to the slot. Yeah. You can interchange those 6 guys, and we're still not even talking about Caden Finley or Caden
That's Williams. A starting line. You just gave a starting lineup for a top 15 team right there, Trev, when you were talking about the 2s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's nuts.
Yep.
From Notre Dame Villain, did you see the viral video of the Maryland women's coach and her players, and what are your thoughts?
I loved it. And I think that people were making an issue of it are soft people or people who didn't play sports or people that want to that wanted to get into politics or culture but weren't talented enough writers. So they're one of 8 million people that are now apparently covering sports. And the fact that people are making this a story shows how ignorant, soft, and agenda-driven the sports media has become. And it really disgusts me because people are looking at it and all they see is her in her face talking to her. But have you seen anybody talk about what she said? You know what I mean? I'm actually going to look this up because I hold on a sec. Because it was, if you actually listen to what she said, you're like, that's what a basketball coach should say. I absolutely love what she said. Let me get to this, because people that are making this out to be some issue are to me, I'm sorry, I'm disgusted by it, and it's absolutely soft. And if you notice, most people that are ripping the coach are not actually, they refuse to put into print what she said. And I'm trying to find it. It's ridiculous that I'm having trouble finding it. But if you go look and see what she said, she was like, this is your moment. You know what I mean? Go seize it. I can't believe that nobody put what the full comment of what she said. But she said basically, like, I need you to get locked back in. I believe in you, but you've got to want this moment. That's what she's yelling at her, not anything else. And so the fact that people are taking this and trying to turn it into some moment, like, I can't believe that the coach would say something like that. And the fact that these same people that are crying about this refuse to put the words of what she actually said into their stories is exactly tells you that this is all agenda driven. And it's agenda driven by people who want to be a political reporter but are stuck in sports. And that's what disgusts me. And so it really pissed me off. It really pissed me off, to be honest with you, to see that people are turning it into something. And the player clearly didn't like it, because if she's in her face screaming at her, say like, yes, thank you, Irishman. You've got to want this the most. This is your story, stuff like that. Exactly. This is your, like, if the player was affected by, like, just her being in her face yelling, like, that girl would not be the best player for a Sweet 16 basketball team. You know, and I get so sick of this stuff where people are like, oh my God, she's yelling at her. You didn't play sports, did you, pansy? You know what I mean? Like, get out of here with that mess. It's more, if she was like, you effing suck, this is why your mother doesn't love you. Okay, yeah, that's a freaking problem. Because of what she said, not the tone or the body language. It's basketball, and there's thousands of people screaming in the auditorium. I know we're getting beat right now, and you're our best player, and you're not playing well, but I just want you to know I love you so much. You're so pretty. I love your hair. Get out of here with that mess. Go write about something you know about, because you clearly don't know anything about sports. Because if you go and actually look at the words she said, everything was, I believe in you. I believe you can be great. We need you to be great, because you can be. That girl wanted nothing more in that moment for her coach to tell her, I believe in you. And guess what? That's exactly what she did. I need you to want this moment, because you can be a champion in this moment. And then people turn it into that, because there's too many sports writers that think they cover politics and culture and not freaking sports. And that's a big problem we have in our media right now. You cover sports. Some of the questions that Notre Dame football players get asked, I'm like, are we covering a football team right now? What are we doing here? And it really pisses me off, because that was a coach being a coach. Someone who believes in her player and is getting everything out of her player and challenging her in that moment. And if that's not right, then everything I believe about athletics is wrong. And I promise you I'm not wrong. The people that are making it something, they're wrong. Because they're political and culture writers who don't know, I'm almost about to cuss, who don't know jack about sports, trying to get their clickbait moment. And I'm not even going to go there. There's another dynamic to this that also plays a role for ignorant people, because that's how they see the world, not how the coach and the player see the world. That also factors in, where if the dynamic was flipped, they probably wouldn't care and it wouldn't be a story. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. What say you, Trev?
I don't know if there's much more for me to add than what you've already said, man. I mean, that's just what, unfortunately, some of the culture is now, because I know it'll get clicks, right or wrong.
Yep.
It's just what people want to hear. They want to hear about bad things. They know people will click on it just to hear what was said or what wasn't said. At the end of the day, if you played sports, you know what that conversation was.
Yes.
You do. I mean, plain and simple. I talked about him on this show a couple of days ago. I mean, it's a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. These days start to run together a little bit. But the most influential coach I ever had was my high school quarterbacks coach. And he taught me a lot about life, and he taught me a lot about the sport, and he taught me a lot about the position.
Mm-hmm.
I can assure you, every conversation that I had with him, and the reason why I respect him and loved him so much, wasn't because every day I walked into the QB room or the film room or the practice field or the gym and he just gave me a compliment every day. I promise you that wasn't the case. If you played sports, you know what's up. And it's very obvious, whether you hear it in interview questions or article pieces that get, like, fluff pieces that get written out of something that's not. You can tell who played sports and who didn't.
Yep. And do you want to know why that girl from Maryland is their top player? Because this is her response when people brought it up. Like, I was like, wait, what? What did she do wrong? Exactly. That's why you're an elite basketball player and the leading scorer for a team in the NCAA tournament, and those people are sitting on the sidelines, like, in their feelings because you got yelled at. That's exactly why I never played sports. Because you ever see what any of the I have yet to see an actual former basketball player have any problem with that moment. Sorry.
From Beefeater ND, do you or anyone in the chat remember the name of the Bo Jackson cheat play from the Tecmo Bowl?
I don't, but I'm sure we could look it up. I mean, it was just an outside toss of the right. All right, let me see if I can find it. It was sweep or dive. They just had wasn't it the two play sweep or dive is what it says. Yeah, I don't see it, but just a run play. I think it was back in the day. You only had 4 options on that game, right? From the original Tecmo Bowl, you had usually 2 runs and 2 passes, or 1 run and 3 passes. So a little bit of a different playbook now, Trev, than what we had back then. But I liked Super Tecmo Bowl better than Tecmo Bowl. You had a little bit more. You had like 6 or 8 plays on Super Tecmo Bowl. Sorry, I couldn't help you, Beefeater.
From Vanilla Chill, is it crazy to have a 5-wide set with Faison as the 6th wide receiver on the field, but lined up at running back? If you could do it, how would it look for you?
Well, the problem is you'd get a penalty.
Yeah.
Because if you had 5 receivers and number 6 was Jordan Faison, you don't have a quarterback. So which of the other 5 receivers is taking a snap? Because that would be 12 guys. So unless we're playing Canadian rules football. So what you could do is you could go 5 wide and bring Jordan Faison into the backfield, and you could do some stuff with him. You could do some outside zone. You could do some run stuff with him, I bet. Yeah, I think you could do some stuff like that, Trev, out of 0 personnel.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think what you would do is, I mean, that's a no huddle situation. You wouldn't see it very often. But you could do some things like that, and you could motion him into the backfield and run some read stuff. And I don't know how effective that would be with the current team. I think you could have actually done more of that stuff if you had a Riley Leonard at quarterback. Because right now you're doing a jet sweep. They all know it's a jet sweep. It's not like CJ is going to really keep the ball and scare you. And if anything, you'd rather CJ Carr pull it and keep it than hand it off to Jordan Faison. So I don't know that I would love that a whole lot.
Super chat from Connor Grant. Appreciate you. Barring injury, do you think over or under 90% of Notre Dame's offensive and defensive starters will be NFL draft picks?
So what, let me see, 22 times 90%. So that's basically 20 guys, 19 to 20 guys. It won't be that. It'll probably be a little less than that, but it'll be a lot closer than it's been in the past. You're going to have some guys that just don't get picked, some guys that, get injured, or, some guys that are just like a real scrappy, and it's a blue collar guy, but you can be close. The thing is, like, the most players we've seen drafted recently is like 15, I think, is somebody might have, I think it's 15, right? Didn't LSU set it, and then didn't Michigan tie it or somebody like that tie it recently?
Something.
But that's not every kid that starts as part of that draft class. You know what I mean? So I could see a world in which 10 guys on each side of the ball get drafted. But I could also see a world where it's only 9, and 9 doesn't get you to 90%. That's still really, really good.
Heck yeah.
But it's possible. I would take the under right now, but it's certainly possible. I'd be very curious to look back at like LSU's 2019 team and Georgia's 21 team and just see how many of those guys didn't get drafted. But it'll be close. Very close.
From Jay Melvin, assuming that Wisconsin season goes away, most people think it does. Do you think if Fickell is gone, he could end up as Notre Dame's next defensive coordinator?
No. I'd be a little surprised if that happened just based on the way I was told things went with when Freeman left. I also don't know that you want to bring a guy in who probably would want to go back to being a head coach at some point in time soon. Luke Fickell actually interviewed for a job at Notre Dame when Charlie Weiss was coach, but he ended up staying in Ohio. But I won't say it's out of the realm of possibility, because for all I know, Luke Fickell and Marcus Freeman have made up since then. For all I know, I don't know. I know that there was an initial problem the way that Luke Fickell was when Freeman left. Maybe they've made up for it and they're all good now. I hope that's the case. But yeah, I don't know how good of a defensive coordinator Luke Fickell is. I think he was a really good position coach, and he was a pretty good co-coordinator. And when I say I don't know, I genuinely don't know, because I don't, that's a genuine question. But if Marcus Freeman hired him, I would imagine he thinks he's pretty good. But
yeah, by and large, I don't love when head coaches become coordinators without some level of gap in between that happening. I don't want it to be an immediate thing. I mean, Al Golden used to be the head coach at Miami. There was a long gap before he took over as defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. Chris Ash used to be a head coach. There was a gap between that and him being a defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. Chip Kelly was a head coach, before he went back to Ohio State for a season to be an offensive coordinator, but there was a gap between that, a little bit of one, I believe. So I don't love that idea, but I'm also with you. I don't think it would be Luke Fickell either. And then from Jay Melvin, Brian, do you think Chad Bowden is the main reason USC has been super hot in high school recruiting this past year?
Yeah. I mean, guys, it's not a coincidence that Notre Dame went from, yes, Marcus Freeman deserves a ton of credit for Notre Dame's success, right? There's no question about that. But let's not pretend like there was a reason that Marcus Freeman fought so hard to get Chad Bowden hired as the defensive recruiting coordinator when he came over as the D coordinator. And look what happened when that happened. All of a sudden, their defensive recruiting, they get Jalen Sneed, they get Junior Tuamaka, Benjamin Morrison, Jaden Mickey, Josh Burnham, all those guys. Not a coincidence. Chad is great at what he does. Do I think that it was time for a change? I think so. I think that Notre Dame was going to a level where they needed a different type of process. But you can't take away what Chad did. And I know a lot of people have tried to, it's just Marcus Freeman. No, it was both of them. They both played a great role in the success they had. And yes, they took the 26 class to another level, but a lot of that was the foundation that was laid by Chad doing what he did. And we always talk about, Dre Brown did this, and Caleb Davis is now a GM at San Diego State, and Carter. Well, who hired all those guys? It was Chad. He went out and brought all those guys in. And so I acknowledge Chad is great at what he does. He's done a great job at USC so far. Did a great job at Notre Dame. It's just that Notre Dame's also rolling because Marcus Freeman also played a huge role in that. I think, like I said, sometimes both things are true. Was Marcus Freeman a driver of Notre Dame's recruiting success his entire time? Absolutely. Was Chad Bowden a driver of that success also? Yeah, as they worked together great. And now he's doing a great job at USC. So certainly. It's not like USC's all of a sudden better at football. They barely above 500 the last 3 years.
Yeah. Agreed.
And their coach isn't nearly as charismatic. And look, Chad kind of made his own bed with some of the comments he made when he left. It's nice to be with a coach who does. I mean, come on, man. That wasn't necessary. But those comments that I dislike don't take away from what Chad did and what
Agreed.
he's doing.
Brian, who was a better team that didn't win a championship? 13 Michigan State or 15 Ohio State?
15 Ohio State, like by far.
Yeah.
And what's ironic is they lost to Michigan State that year, but that was a bad loss and a bad game. I don't think it's something where like that team was loaded. That 13 Michigan State team was really good, but that 15 Ohio State team is probably the best team I've ever seen that didn't play for a championship. There's been some great teams that lost the championship game. The 0-2 Miami team comes to mind.
But played
Ohio
for
State didn't
agreed.
even get there.
Yeah.
The other one that I would put in that category is 1989 Notre Dame. That would be another one. Different situation, though, because obviously there was no playoff back then. But like Notre Dame was – it was going to be hard for Notre Dame to be able to win that game. Like the championship game was technically like Miami, Nebraska or something like that. But, yeah, that'd be the other one.
I would – especially at the end of the season, I think I would put 2016 USC above 13 Michigan State. I know their records were different, but that 2016 USC team probably could have made a run if there was a playoffs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's been a couple others in the playoff era, Trev, in the BCS era. Oh, here's another good one. Here's a team that I think was better than 13 Michigan State. 2011 Oklahoma State. That team was nasty. The one that beat Andrew Luck in the Fiesta Bowl, that team was nasty. I think they would have beat LSU or Bama in the title game that year. Because remember, the only loss they had was like a Thursday night game, and it was right after there was a plane crash that killed a bunch of like people in the sports department.
Yeah,
and I never thought they should have played the game, but that 2011 Oklahoma State team was legitimately elite.
I mean, heck, dude, I might even put 2019 Alabama in that discussion over 13 Michigan State. That team was loaded.
Yeah. Another one that was really good that did 18 Ohio State. I would take over 13.
Yeah.
They had that one terrible night on like a Thursday or Friday night. Was it Saturday night game against Purdue? But outside of that team was really nasty. Okay. There's been some other teams like that, Trev, that I thought belonged in that conversation more than 13 Michigan State.
From Ian Leati, which is better, the feeling of game day in college or high school?
They're very different. I preferred college over high school because high school you always had to go to class. It was on a Friday, you couldn't really get into football mode until later in the day. I just think there's something about a waking up in the morning and all you got to worry about's football. I think there's just something about that I love. Yeah, I'd go college, but they're very different for a different lot of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, man, I didn't even play in college, and I'm kind of leaning towards college.
Yeah. Last couple, Trev.
Super chat from Jared Z. Bear. Appreciate you. Do you think 2010 Boise State would have been given a chance to play for a national title if they didn't lose to Nevada? They beat Oregon in 2009.
Bro, did you see the and one Hannah Hidalgo just got? Oh, dude, wait till you go back and see it. No, I don't. I know they beat Oregon in 2009, but they didn't beat Oregon in 2010. So I'm just trying to refresh my memory a little bit. So just give me a second. I mean, Oregon was 12-0. They had beaten a ranked USC team, a top 10 Stanford team. They'd blown out UCLA on the road. Auburn was undefeated. There's no way an undefeated Boise State team gets in over an undefeated Power 4 team. If Oregon had lost a game, maybe, but no, they're not getting in. They're not getting in over a pair of undefeated teams. No, I don't. And that was a really good Boise State team, but no, they didn't belong. They didn't belong in a championship game over an undefeated Pac-12 team and an undefeated SEC team. Because again, I know they beat Oregon in 2009, but 2009 Oregon wasn't as good as 2010 Oregon, obviously, because they didn't go undefeated. Oregon lost 3 games, 2 games in the regular season that year. They got beat by Boise State by 11, barely beat Purdue that year, barely beat Utah that year, and then lost at Stanford. Needed overtime to win on the road against Arizona, who was 8-5. It was a Mike Stoops Arizona. Barely beat a good but not great Oregon State team. So no, I don't think they were the same team. And what they did the year before doesn't really matter that year. Like Notre Dame shouldn't have been in the playoffs this year because, like, hold on a second. How is Georgia getting in the playoffs over Notre Dame when Notre Dame beat Georgia in the playoffs last year? Doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's what is your team now?
Yeah.
Last 2 questions. This is one, Trev. Whose Heisman loss was more heartbreaking for you, Quinn 05 or Teo in 2012? My answer is none of the above. 1990 Rocket Ismail. By far. Brady Quinn was great in 05. I didn't think he was the best player in college football in 05. Reggie Bush was the best player in college football in 05. I was more disappointed in Manti not getting into Brady Quinn. And I love Brady Quinn, but even someone who loves Brady Quinn can say, yeah, but number 5 for USC was the best player in college football that year. You know what I mean? Like, bro went behind his back against the ranked Fresno State team. You know what I mean? Do you remember that play, Trev?
Oh, I do.
I still go 1990 Rocket Ismail. It was the biggest snow job ever for Heisman Trophy. That one stung. Yeah.
I mean, shoot, I'm half inclined to go 25 Love. I mean, I thought he was the best player in college football, and I do think it's ironic that they waited until after the college football season was over and the NFL draft comps and all the NFL draft analysts and all these college football talking heads then start talking about how he was the best player in college football after the award for the best player in college football had already been given out. But between those two, I would go Teo in 12 just because of his story, what it meant for that team. Yeah, I would.
Yep. I would say I'm more disappointed in the Jeremiah Love one. Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, the Rocket one by far. Last question, Trev. Here we go. This is it. I've been passing this one up. I've been holding off to this one until the very end.
From Joseph Barrett, will Notre Dame win the college football national championship in 2026?
Okay, props, Joseph, to just getting to the point. Very direct question. And the answer is yes. I believe Notre Dame will win the national championship in 2026. Yes, I do. I believe they are the best team in college football right now. We'll see how things develop over the next couple months. But yes, right now, that's what I believe to be true.
Well, there's not much of a better way to end the show than with that answer. And Brian, I am on board with you. We see that very much the same. But folks, that is going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, if you haven't gotten enough IB content today, IB Nation Sports Beat is going live at 5:05. They have their We In, We Out. So make sure you tune into them at 5:05. On your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. Brian and I are going to be back on Monday with Buy, Sell, Hold. So come correct like you guys did today. That thread will go up at some point on the message boards over the weekend, which is a great reminder. Make sure you are a premium message board subscriber at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Have a fun and safe weekend, everyone. Until Monday, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. See you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.